Hello and welcome to the deepest dive on Dead Space from MinnMax. My name is Ben Hanson. Thank you for being here. I'm joined by MinnMax's Kyle Hilliard.
Altman be praised.
That's right. Jacob Geller from YouTube fame. Welcome back, Jacob.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of a quote from Dead Space to say.
Just breathing sounds?
I don't know. Hello, everyone.
Just quietly look ahead and we'll know you're quoting Isaac.
Yep, that's it.
That's me as Isaac.
That's it. We have Kate Sanchez from ButWhyTho. Welcome back, Kate.
Oh God, I guess I can just make that weird sound where he's asphyxiating at 40% oxygen.
Yeah. My God. It's like I'm there all over again. And we're also joined by Zach Mumbach. Welcome back, Zach.
Make us whole.
Make us whole, everybody.
Yeah.
This is it.
Took that one.
This is the second half of the deepest dive on 2008's Dead Space. This is the best, most thorough discussion about Dead Space on the internet. And it is all fueled by your comments over at patreon.com/MinnMax. With two N's. We're going to be reading a bunch of comments that people submitted because people played along with us, submitted great insight along the way. We couldn't do it without y'all, so thank you all for your support. And if you want to unlock the podcast version and just help support this Game Club format moving into the future by unlocking the podcast version of this, all of our previous Deepest Dive, everything like that, you can go to patreon.com/MinnMax with two N's. If you like this type of content, you can support it or join it over on Patreon. Hey, this is it, everybody, the second half. Okay, so for this discussion, this is covering everything from the beginning of Chapter 7 all the way until credits roll, and then maybe a bit after if you wanted to loop back around with some of the fun New Game Plus stuff. Okay, we got to kick it off this way. I wish we didn't, but it's the ritual here, and we're all about rituals for the second half of Dead Space. Most common comment. We had a lot of people playing along with us for the community and submitting comments about the second half of Dead Space. The first half, you might recall, it was all about F those asteroids. Kate, you have a sparkle in your eye, like you know what the most common comment's going to be about.
Did the ending scare you? Like not like the ending, like the ending, like the last thing we see before credits cut.
That was one of those moments where I was sitting on my couch and just by myself, but still like looked around like, what is this? But we'll get into all that. Okay, that's a solid guess. Kyle, what do you got?
The fact that there's an audio log where a character named Jacob can't find their ship.
Ooh.
And we have a Jacob on the call.
And he doesn't have a ship. Okay, solid.
It's true. Yeah, sorry you missed out on that, Jacob.
Yeah. Zach, what do you think?
0G basketball.
Now this man knows how to play the most common comment.
I got the achievement this time.
Jacob Geller, final guess.
It might have already been taken. How about dragging the marker around in the last level?
Not one comment about that. I was kind of disappointed, actually. Yeah, people aren't whining in general. Kate, I think you were closest. I think the bulk of the comments were about just kind of Nicole and the plot twists around Nicole. Kind of like the Nicole revelations towards the end was the most common refrain. My
second answer was the chapter acronym.
Yes.
I bet there were several on that.
Yes, that is one of those things. I like the way that the person phrased it because it's like, yeah, maybe people don't remember this, but going into this game, that is one of the few things I knew about where the story was going because I remember learning about that probably when the game first came out and being like, oh, that's such a neat little idea. And so Caleb Murray writes in and says, I don't know how common knowledge this little Easter egg is nowadays, but Chapter 1 is new arrivals, Chapter 2, intensive care, Chapter 3, course correction, Chapter 4, obliteration imminent, lethal devotion, environmental hazard, into the void, search and rescue, dead on arrival, end of days, alternate solutions, Dead Space. You take the first letter of all those things and it's Nicole is dead. So it is kind of a fun way to go through the game if that's like the one big spoiler you know about it is like each new chapter being like, okay, how much closer are we to the Wheel of Fortune reveal of Nicole is dead for the big sentence here? But
this is a minor thing right off the bat, but I love when a video game has a chapter that is titled the name of the video game.
Ooh,
like
100%.
that always just makes me, or like if a TV show has an episode that's called the TV show's name, but it just makes me excited. I'm like, oh, this is it. We're getting into it.
yeah,
How do you feel about the movie's title being said as part of dialogue?
That's less special. I mean, they can do that at any time.
Sucker for that. Whoever I'm with, I'm like, they said the thing. They did the thing. Now you can do it too much, but like they're just special. Like I think that can be special depending on how it's delivered. Like Hammond saying "Welcome to Jurassic Park."
Right.
Like
sure.
And this happened
But
saying,
when
welcome
that
to Dead
title came
Space.
up and it was Dead Space, I was like, oh,
I feel like
we reached it.
There's a difference though. It feels kind of like winky and I don't know, cheeky when they say the name of the thing in it, and it kind of takes me out of it. But there's something about like, yeah, if the chapter is named after it or the episode is named after it, it's like this one super counts. This is like everything we're
That's
going
fair,
for.
yeah.
You know, it's a different tone somehow.
It's also weird. It's the one chapter you're not in space, right?
That's right.
I mean, I
Yeah.
guess so. If you want to be a stickler.
There's still a lot of dead, I guess.
Oh, Lord, is there? Yeah. So the Chun submitted a comment over there on Patreon, and he just said, "Yo, Ben, I made that thing." And I said, "What is it? What could this possibly be?" And there's a visual component that you all will be missing, but here it is. Amazing.
Oh, man. That worked really well.
Dude, that works so well.
Chun, you're a hero. Thank you for getting that out of my brain and into everybody else's brain. Very much
I'm
appreciated.
just glad I didn't. I'm glad I've heard it now and not halfway through the game. 'Cause that would have been a problem.
Yeah, it'll contaminate you.
I think the audio guys are going to be bummed when they hear that.
But how was the second half of the game for you, Zach?
It was good. Man, I had forgotten so much of it, especially like the story stuff and how it starts to kind of ratchet up. I sent a message today to one of the writers and was like, hey, I don't want to get into spoilers, so maybe I'll bring this up later, but just what was up with the whole Nicole thing? Because, you know, like early on, what is it in chapter 7 or chapter 8? It's chapter 7, she's there, like physically there.
Right.
She opens the door for you and she's talking to you. And this is like the first time where it really sticks out. It stuck out before, but this is really where Isaac not talking is just, it really sticks out. Because then Kendra's contact you and, you know, obviously, hey, Kendra, guess what?
Right.
You know,
Anything.
and none of that, like, it's not being communicated back to her that you're either Nicole's there or you're seeing Nicole or whatever's happening here, right? So,
And it's so weird when they try to play up the emotions a little bit, like, you know, just to jump to this scene when you get to see, what's the right way to phrase this for a normal person? Like Nicole's suicide, and Isaac's just like, oh no, just like puts his hand on his little space helmet and rocks it around. It's like they're toying with ideas of emotions, but just to not have any voice. Just have them like gasp or something in that scene just to try and get that point across, and you can still keep it kind of amorphous for the voice.
yeah, that part was weird. But you know, I love the unitology stuff is really starting to come into play in the second half here. I love the unitology stuff. I kind of had thought, I remembered, I guess, some of the stuff from Dead Space 2. You know, they're pretty heavy with that stuff at parts. I guess I had remembered that as one. So it wasn't as much like unitology stuff as I remembered being in here. But you know, there's the sequence where you come into the room and there's all the like candles. And it's clear like some kind of like ritual suicide happened.
Yeah.
Mercer is just stabbing people in the head now.
Yeah.
You know, like whoa, in on it.
Like right in the top of the head. Oh God.
Yeah. You find this log. It's one of my favorite text logs. And it's like, I think it's the first mate or somebody. And he's like, I just found out these damn unis are running the ship, you know? And he's got this list of like known unitologists running the ship. And so, yeah, I really like that layer of the story coming out here.
Yeah. Nick writes in.
I'm hit or miss when reading text logs, but Dead Space is among the few that like I eagerly read every one. And I really liked, there's one that's like basically the first chapter of a book about unitology that really kind of breaks it down. And it's like, they're not even like pretending it's not a Scientology kind of, you know, line to draw. It's like there are celebrities, there are rich celebrities that you can buy your way into certain tiers of the religion and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Did you ever hear from the Church of Scientology at Visceral? Were they ever knocking on the door and be like, come on, guys, be cool?
Not to my knowledge.
That's exactly what you
We
would
heard
say.
from other churches for other things, but not them.
Just Dante's Inferno crowd. Yeah. I enjoyed all that stuff. It's amazing how much really important lore just for what's going on here is just in like that text dump. Yeah, like you mentioned, Kyle, where it's like, oh, it's the start of a book. And like, here's all the stuff you know about unitology, but we'll just go ahead and break it all down anyway. And then even the audio logs, it's like, if you just happen to miss that or skip that, you're really going to be largely in the dark about what's happening here. It's wild to leave all that stuff so optional, but I don't know what else they really have for an option here.
Yeah. I also
I think it
forgot
worked.
all the like comics. All these like there's all and so I went after I beat the game, I went way down the like Wikipedia rabbit hole or the not even Wikipedia, but you know, whateverpedia. And man, there's all these like comic books and like other things that are filling in all this story about the markers and unitology and the origins, and it gets really, really thick. Like I was reading through it and having to, that's why I ended up messaging the guy I know who wrote it. Just like the internet's got a lot.
Yeah. What did you?
I watched the movie. I think there was like a 90. I don't know how long.
The
it was. It
anime
wasn't super
movie?
long.
That thing
Yeah.
is so good.
Really?
It's genuinely creepy.
I would.
She's
I think
Rotten
it's
Tomatoes
really good.
certified, Kyle. I'm with Kate on this one.
I like that it exists, and I watched it, and I like how it fleshes out. It's like, you know, it's that multimedia sort of approach can really backfire in a huge way. But in Dead Space, I tended to absorb a lot of it and enjoyed it just because I like the sort of universe of Dead Space. And yeah, the anime was interesting. I think it basically sets up. Help me, Kate, if I'm misremembering. I think it sets up basically what happens on the Ishimura right before Isaac arrives, I think.
Oh, that's a fun idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
Dead Space Downfall was the name of that one, I guess.
Yeah.
I really like it, and it's funny too because it's a part of this trend where EA was having, I guess EA, because there's also the Mass Effect anime, which is like a 90-minute movie just on
Right.
Vega.
Yeah.
I personally like this. I like the anime a lot, and I think it's good, but I think it's good for like all the reasons that I just love space horror, and like it's also been a hot minute since I've watched it, so like this also made, you know, now I need to go rewatch it.
I kind of want to look up at least bits of it, you know, like trailers and stuff, just to kind of get a sort of jog my memory of what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, Clint Farley wrote in and says, I was surprised no one mentioned the episodic animated comic they released over the 6 weeks up to launch. It's a great way to build up the story for what happened on the planet with the discovery of the marker. I also really like all the outside material, reading Dead Space Martyr and learning about the original marker found on Earth, as well as the story of Michael Altman was really interesting. Yeah, I remember Tim Turry back at Game Informer was obsessed with that lore. But yeah, Zach, what'd you learn from talking to the writer?
Well, I was mainly just kind of, it was really simple and quick. I was asking about the Nicole thing, and specifically I was the message, right? The fact that Kendra goes, hey, watch that message again. And like, there's more. And so I was like, did Kendra like intercept the message or what's going on there? Where's my phone? I don't mess with his answer, but his answer was real simple. He was like, Tyler Durden. That was the answer he gave me.
Well,
I mean, playing through it, I mean, obviously it doesn't explain like, did Kendra see the message or whatever, but I was watching and like, there is nothing Nicole does that you could not do. It's not like she's like across a room and flips a switch or something.
It literally
like,
she does that.
It literally does that.
There's the whole
no, but I
sequence.
don't think that it like results in anything tangible.
Yeah, I like that sequence that I'm joking about, where you have to defend her while she's like working on the switch across the room. Like, you know, in Isaac's mind, that could totally just be a thing that took some time to open.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I
like,
mean?
you know, you picture it's like Ed Norton dropping a beer can on the side of the street. Like that's, you know, that is what that scene is.
Right. Yeah. During that scene, because I knew that, spoiler, that she was dead, I just let it sit for a while because I'm like, I don't think they'll actually attack her. But I believe they do. And like Sean Mills even points out that it's a smart UI choice to have her health bar on her back, of course, because every miner has to watch their back in this universe. And so you can actually have a visual representation of how poorly you're doing. But I did like, you know, after that scene's over and you kill all those necromorphs on the far side, then she like just walks out of the room, but she has to walk through like a ball pit of body parts, and they're just like all like
Yes,
physics-y just flailing around during her cool strut out the door. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
All right,
the
Nicole.
physics are unexplained by her being dead. That is an anomaly.
Yeah. A thing that ended up being really creepy about her that I like a lot is that every NPC you meet throughout the entire course of the game is blocked off to you by like glass or something.
Right.
But Nicole, first one that was like in the same space with you, and that like was weirdly unsettling for me. Like it was like, you know, that made her creepier somehow, that she was like, she felt like she was actually there. You know,
I mean, it's pretty rare. I mean, Hammond is there in the space with you, I guess, even after the intro. And then Kine is a little near you, like when he's outside the ship, like, come on, we gotta go, blah, 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 blah. But it was one of those things, like, it reminded me of like Gone Home and how it's kind of secretly suspenseful game. It's like, is there going to be somebody else in this house? Then I just had to remember that, like, okay, production values, I don't think this indie team had the budget to go for like a great looking human being. And I kept thinking about with this, where it's like, I don't think I'm going to get too close to anybody because I don't think their facial tech was exactly top notch and eventually to the point where it eventually got to. So even like when Kine was on the walkway, like, come this way, I was like, something's going to happen. Then of course his chest blows apart. Although, where was Kendra like sniping? I was confused about what that was that actually killed him there.
I was also confused.
Okay. So that's
it was also Tyler Durden.
Oh, Tyler Durden. I see it now.
I was going to say, so I actually don't remember Downfall that much. I was remembering Aftermath.
Oh.
So Dead Space Aftermath is what happens between Dead Space 1 and Dead Space 2. So there are 2 animated movies.
Wow.
Oh, I don't think I ever watched that.
Downfall and Aftermath.
I played a lot of the arcade game, which is like prequel to Dead Space 2, and a little bit of the on-rail shooter, which I think was Extraction, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
So Extraction was the Wii one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it came to PlayStation a little later, yeah.
I'm sure there was a mobile game too, right, Zach? Seems like that era.
There was a mobile game. It was like it was like Dead Space. It wasn't like Dead Space Mobile. It was like that era where there was like a weird BioShock phone game.
Right.
Like it's bizarre. It's like a 3D over the shoulder shooter. It looks like Dead Space, but it was on your phone and it had like a resolution of like 48 pixels. But it was a thing.
Wow, this looks bizarre.
Wow, okay.
God,
I didn't know they did that. I know that at one point during Dead Space 2, there was like a team doing like basically XCOM Dead Space in the studio, and it was like mobile focused, and I don't know what happened with it. Like for whatever reason, it just didn't pan out, but they were working on this like tactical, very much like XCOM. You're moving units around to take out necromorphs and stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. That would have been before Enemy Unknowns. It was before the kind of revival of XCOM to that extent.
Yeah, it was around the time of 2, so whenever that was, maybe it was after we finished 2, before 3. It was somewhere in that window, yeah.
Is it frustrating to have to develop a new game like Dead Space 2 and 3 and just kind of take into account these movies and stuff? Like, what's the developer's attitude? Is it just like this laughable thing of like, whatever, or is it actually frustrating to try and navigate these cones on the freeway here?
It's cool, and you know, mostly I work on like mechanical stuff, you know,
right.
Like how, you know, shooting works, or how, you know, on Dead Space, you know, 3, for instance, it's like how human enemies are going to feel, because we never had human enemies, and how the roll is going to feel, and trudging around in the snow and all that. I didn't have a lot to do with story on Dead Space, so for me it was like really cool. It made the world feel, you know, more real. I think I for sure I couldn't tell you what's going on as far as the whole overarching story. Even in 1, kind of near the end of this game, once they get to this point where they're like, the original marker was on Earth, we found this other marker here, we brought this other marker here. It starts to get to me like, hey, we mined this planet, we found this marker, it unleashed havoc. It's like really clean, and when it starts to get into like multiple markers and all these things, and they really go down that with Dead Space 2, Dead Space 3, I start to like, I'm not smart enough to follow up. You know, my attention span isn't there for all those little details.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm with you on. I'm also not smart enough. Hopefully somebody on this panel is smart. Can somebody explain just narratively, like, what is the idea and the reasoning you think for having it not be the original marker, but instead the backup marker? Or like a replica of the marker that then is brought out to this planet and put on the planet, and then that's what drives all these creatures mad. Like, just so you can have the original marker hiding somewhere?
Other than the fact that unitology was already a thing. You know, it's like, if this was the first time anything like this had ever been discovered, then they wouldn't really be able to like build a cult with an established history around it, because it would be like, well, this all happened in the last week. Whereas here, you know, you get this kind of depth that then they can make another movie and comic book and whatever about.
And I think for me, like when I try to think about it like analytically from like a position of like what scares us, like we can only get scared by things that are happenstance so much. But once you show that it was something that was a path chosen by humans, then it gets a little bit scarier. because it's no
Right.
longer, oh, we excavated this planet, we awakened an ancient evil, and now it's going to kill us. And some people worshipped it because, like, that actually makes sense. Like, if a planet's trying to kill you, of course, maybe you could, like, worship it and maybe it won't kill you. But, like, when you have the concept of, like, well, actually, this isn't that. Like, we brought this and we decided to go down this road and we drove the spaceship down that road. It gets a little bit more, it touches into that fear of what's human and like the monstrous within the human that horror plays with a lot. And I think it just, I don't want to say, I think it's a little convoluted when it's executed, but I think with the logs, with the voice logs specifically, they're so fantastically voice acted that I think that there are elements where you get to like hear that human quality and like the scariness of it, or even like whenever we saw a human on the ship, they were doing something to themselves or they were doing something to someone else. And it's that uncanny valley into the things that make humans monsters that I think that they were going for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it also maybe just, separates it from kind of that alien mold of like, we discovered something, my God, this ancient evil we've awakened. You're right. It makes it more personal for human race and makes it more about humanity just with 200 years of this religion history. But I think it's just more.
I also like it as just a, like, we were messing with something we shouldn't have been messing with. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how it feels more to me. And I like that more. You know what I mean? I like the, like you were saying, I like the human error of it all, you know?
Yeah. And also it makes
Hubris.
it less guessable if it's not a matter of like us versus them, but it's like, oh no, actually there are kind of three sides, right? Because it's kind of like, okay, you have the mining team where they were doing something illegal, mining on this planet where they shouldn't have been, and then there's the unitologists, and then the military. Yeah, I guess like the government that's trying to hide the marker and keep up their big old Area 51 stuff.
Well, hold on. I'm going to ask a question that maybe we won't have an answer to. I thought the mine, like, the Ishimura was diverted to this planet specifically because of this. Like the illegal thing that the miners were doing was because Unitology was like, go here, do this. Maybe
could
I'm
be. I
confused.
thought
They say that in a log that specifically they had found a captain that was a unitologist. This goes back to the first
Right.
mate going, oh crap, we're into some kind of weird unitologist thing here. They had like put the captain in that position knowing they were going to do this. It's unclear, like the illegal mining part versus like that objective. If like they're both were doing the same objective and not knowing that, like the CEC, this company that runs the like mining operation, like who is it? Someone in power there, and
I just kind of assumed there were a bunch of like workers on the ship and they were like, okay, I guess this is the planet that we're supposed to dig on. And then there was just like these few people in leadership who were like, hold on, why are we at this planet? I thought we were supposed to go over here. And the reason that they're at that planet is because of unitology.
I think that probably is right. Yeah. Throughout all of this, the twists and turns and Kendra revealing, here's what's going on. No, here's what's going on. At a certain point, it feels just like a South Park episode where Isaac's just like, stand or crowds like, okay, all right, whichever one reveal you have planned for me, I will go along with. But it comes back to that no voice acting where it just feels like he's just being whipped around and is just kind of like quietly nodding like, sure, just tell me what to shoot, please.
Yeah, I think honestly, like finishing up this game and kind of like just thinking back on it, like I tend to not say that I want live action video game things because they usually don't work well.
Yeah.
But I genuinely want a live action Dead Space series because I think that there are a lot of nooks and crannies and flashbacks that could be done like with that ability to storytell, and Isaac also having a voice so he can react to the things. Because I think one of the reasons that like the human stuff feels kind of like tacked on or like convoluted or like that, I think it's because Isaac doesn't react to the world in a way that you would.
Yeah.
Because like that, like one of like the best reveals in horror movies is when a character realizes that the people that they trust or the people that they thought they were saving were actually the people that were doing the murdering or like, you know, the thing. And that human fear that your protagonist has is what pulls you more into it. And so I think when the story starts to twist, because we're supposed to map ourselves on Isaac, and Isaac doesn't really have anything outside of grunts and very, very forceful stomps, we kind of lose some of that empathetic connection that you would get in another storytelling format.
Look, good news. Dead Space 2 exists. Isaac has a voice. He's a normal character. He says things and responds to his situations. Yeah. It works.
He has very legitimate reasons for not trusting the people who are putting their trust in him.
Yeah,
look, I know this isn't a Dead Space 2 deepest dive, but Dead Space 2 is where it's at.
Somebody did bring up that
I really felt that, like, not, you know, I'm not, like, this idea that he's silent, so I'm supposed to be him. I really felt I'm not Isaac the moment Kine took the shuttle, because I would never, ever, ever let that happen.
Yeah.
Right? And that, that was and if Isaac is talking to him, and then, like, okay, Isaac's letting this happen for whatever reason Isaac has, I'm just playing, that's fine. But when that was happening, I was just like, no way, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that guy? No, that's the guy who's flying the spaceship?
He made me laugh so much because...
Wow, your only hope for, like, survival, right? You're gonna let that guy who's, like, talking to his dead wife.
He was convincing, though. He was really... Yeah, he was telling you everything you wanted to hear, kind of, sort of. And Kendra eventually was like, well, I guess... don't go along with it, but maybe we do have to. But like, that guy made me laugh so much because every time he was over the intercom, he's like, all right, Isaac, I'm going to try and land the ship. I'm not quite sure what any of these buttons do. Like, every time he communicated with you, it was always this tone of like, well, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm trying to lace up one of my shoes, Isaac. Please have mercy. It's just that tone over and over again. And then he blows it. Danny Yorkus writes in and says, there are parts where people are suffering and Isaac will refuse to put them out of their misery. One guy was being pinned to the ceiling by the flow of gravity, grunting in pain. Another guy was holding his own severed leg, and Isaac just lowers his weapon and stares at them. It made me feel bad for them. Also, this is my 5th time playing through one of my favorite games, and I couldn't miss out on getting in on the steepest dive. Thanks, Danny. Yeah, so if we're really role-playing Isaac, it turns out he is the ultimate sociopath of just watching these people slowly kill themselves over and over and over again.
Ammo scarcity is a thing. You use a plasma cutter round on a suffering guy, you can't use it on a necromorph.
That's true, man. You might see one of those Xbox treasure chests floating around, and sometimes instead of using the gravitation on it, you just got to shoot it once from a distance.
Like, opposite that, though, if you use the plasma cutter thingy right there, I don't know if the ammo is called. I know it's not actually ammo because it's not actually a gun, so it's a thingy.
Yes.
Right there and take care of him, then you don't have to worry about him turning into a necromorph later.
That's smart. So he should just be like...
That's what your boot's for.
Yeah, he should just put stomping. Like he should be wearing one ice skate and just stomping around and removing every limb from every body that he comes across. That should be all that he's concerned about.
And that was pitched for Dead Space 3, Zach? Is that why? That's why it's on an ice planet?
We needed more. This is what happens when you have Californians. If we had somebody, they're not.
There we go.
Ice and hockey and whatnot.
Hell yeah.
We got really in depth. Real quick, but can I give like an overall take on these chapters? Because I had something that I didn't expect, which is I think the second half scarier than the first half.
Interesting.
At least for me.
Now what for you, Ben? Because this was your first time, right?
Yeah. I'm a complete little baby boy.
The lights on over here.
I know the lights were down. They were dim.
Like that?
No, dimmer than this. This is just studio lighting now. I maybe scarier than the first half, but I still was never scared to play. But a couple things got me in this half, like having those faster enemies, which I think are kind of stupid. We can go into that. But like the one that freaked me out, and not really a problem in combat, but I even was taking a note on this. Where I was like, you know what this game needs is just like a good classic tall, skinny guy that just like stands there. Like Slender Man is like number one fear for me. And then I swear to God, it was like 10 minutes later, it's just that exact model of just a huge lanky guy kind of wearing pieces of like a cloak or something. I'm like, okay, yep, that's it. I hate that crap.
No,
but then he's just a chump.
And the noise that they make, where it's just kind of this like moaning that is not like the other monsters do. Like, I think those guys are genius level, just make me kind of freak out when I see them, even though they're not that dangerous.
Yeah, noise-wise, what freaked me out the most are the wall guys. The guys that are in the wall that shoot out the little one limb, because there's like this the high-pitched screaming that they're doing. They seem to be like in the most pain out of any creature in this world. It seems horrific. So I can kind of dig it. Okay, so tall guys, what else you got, Jacob? What really freaked you out in the second half?
I thought the whole mission where you are on the ship that is not the Ishimura, the Valor,
right?
Like, I thought that whole chapter was just real freaky, and there is a combination of like a lot of action, and I just find the fast guys good and frightening. Like, I don't really have complaints about that.
I like the fast guys. Yeah.
And then they started to throw in a lot of the guys with the big bomb arm.
Yeah.
Who like are not scary looking per se, but as soon as they enter the arena, they just kind of scream, and you know that like if they get close enough to you, you're just getting like smacked around, and so they are in some ways like the most dangerous. And so there's just like a lot of kind of tension in the scenarios, just because they were like amping up the difficulty a little bit that I didn't get in the first part. And yeah, I just I don't know. There are more scenarios that I came out of like than in the first part.
Yeah, I don't think it was not scarier because I felt that I had gotten to understand that I wasn't going to be safe in the Ishimura. So like that level, like they pulled the rug out from me, and I realized that there was nothing there and there was never going to be a safety net. So like I kind of settled into the fear, which kind of dropped the fear a little bit. But then I had like the, oh my God, moments, not because I was terrified, but because I went into full-on panic mode because of the fast ones.
Yeah.
And like, because I'm already a panicked player. Like, something jumping out of me, like already putting me at like a 15, I'm gonna just shoot and then aim second. And then you introduce speed into it, and then I always forget that I have stasis. Yep. So like it's the perfect combination for me where like my body's like react and kill it now, not oh you should put them in stasis first and then it's not a problem. And so like I found myself on I guess like a higher adrenaline kick playing the second half because it was faster paced and more difficult, and it made me more frantic almost.
It had a lot more sequences that I wasn't expecting of like I don't think there were. Maybe there was like one in the first half, but there was a lot in this half of just quarantine initiated, locking down room, and then it's just basically, hey, here's a combat arena. And like it
big
worked.
Combat sequences, which I don't know, Kyle, how you felt about this, but that's right around when I'm in the barracks combat sequence on the Valor, where it's just it's a lot.
Yeah,
it's right around when I started regretting my plasma cutter only choice.
I made it all the way to the end. It's fun because I got a few achievements this time that I never got in my first playthrough. So I got like we can talk about 0G basketball more, but I got the achievement for that, and I got the plasma cutter only achievement. So it's funny to look at my achievement list because my last one was 2009. And then I have an achievement for 2021, cool. Which is very funny. But I had one or two occasions where I ran out of plasma ammo. But overall, I actually found that it made the game easier just because I could sell off everything I didn't need and just stock up on plasma ammo like crazy.
I would say thanks to the very helpful reminder that I can just put ammo in my bank. I never ran out of ammo. Because I stayed pretty well equipped. I still did the carry what I need strategy only. But I tend to do that in horror games anyway, because like, no, this other stuff may be cool for now, but it's not what I need.
Right.
But yeah, no, I only did plasma cutter this round, and I left my beloved line gun away.
Oh wow.
And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
So, Zach, did you also make it all the way through with just a plasma cutter, or did you end up getting some more?
Coward.
I, after going room after room, just running out of ammo and barely making it, I went line gun, and because we had talked about it And I know I used it before, but when we talked about it, we kind of dismissed it last time. The machine gun, the whatever rifle. That thing when you upgrade it is amazing.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I actually,
Okay, cool.
I ended with 3 guns, and it was plasma line and the machine gun, and especially on like the
pulse rifle. No, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
the pulse rifle. Yeah, and it's like on the bosses, or on those like tentacles where they've just got the big weak point.
Ooh,
the pulse rifle just shreds those things.
That does seem tailor-made for that. Yeah, you're totally right. So I ended up selling a lot of my stuff, and I was just going with the basic cutter, and then I had the line gun, got that one back, and you all are totally right. That's fantastic. And then I had the force energy blaster, because I don't know how else you deal with the little critters and crap. Even like the tall guy's heads and all his pieces. Like, it's just nice to have like my one backup thing, but when I run out of all other ammo and all I have is like the big air blast thing, it's so ridiculous. Like I was in some boss fight and that's all I had. It's like, well, I hope he comes really close. And it was like the tentacle things. It's like, I don't know what to do here. I don't think I can ever hurt these things. I'll just keep running.
Did you press X to heal? Did that feel very good?
Oh my God, game changer. Game changer. Also game changer is shooting their legs. It's a very obvious thing for everybody, but honestly, going to the second half where it's like, oh my God, I can stop them from running by just taking a blast at the legs. And suddenly this game's for babies.
Last week, you're making fun of them for telling you how much they need to cut off their limbs, and you didn't absorb it at all.
I didn't know legs were limbs.
Hanson, they're legs.
Only arms are limbs, where I come from.
Limb.
I think they're so distracting when they're running at you with those huge, stupid arms. Like, how can you not aim for that? It's, it's Batman's symbol on his chest. That's where you got to shoot. Let's see. Joseph Dowdy, actually, Clement Zobel writes in and says, the flamethrower is actually pretty good. I ignored it when I first played it, but this time is one of my mains. Sure, it consumes ammo like crazy, but pump enough fire into a necromorph and all of its limbs pop off. I killed every brute with the flamethrower. All it took was a full tank and minimal effort. I even used it against the hive mind using the long-range alt fire, and when you fully upgrade its damage, the fire turns blue. That seems fantastic. And
Well, that's cool. I always abandon that thing, so that's really cool to know.
Well, here's how you know that Visceral cares about what they do, because Joseph Dowdy writes in, he says, I don't know what I was expecting, but the flamethrower does not work in a vacuum. Good game confirmed.
Ooh.
Oh, that is cool.
That's a very smart idea.
What was the name of the ship? The other ship? You guys said it a few times.
Valor.
The Valor.
Valor. I just wanted to call out that sequence because just in storytelling in general, I'm just a big fan of like your final hope is right there and then the rug gets pulled out from under you. I love that.
The Shining.
In movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
Like I love like the end of Infinity War, like that's like one of my favorite things. It's just like when everything goes to hell. And I feel like that was just like a perfect execution of like the slow burn of knowing that a necromorph had been sent to them and they received it and not really knowing what they were doing with it. And then getting to literally watch the ship crash into the Ishimura was like awesome. It's like watching all your hopes crash in front of you for Savior, and it's just like it's awesome in terms of just like horror storytelling.
Honestly, that might be my favorite moment in the game. Was like you're watching, I think it's Kendra on the little video screen on the right, and apparently I was really glued in, and it was just like the perfect peripheral vision. Like, what is that over there? Oh my God! It's such a perfect use of making you look all the way to the right, and then on the left, out of space, is just like, oh, here's Doom coming in. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it.
And we called out how dumb it was that escape pod got sent out in the first thing, and it was like, it turns out it was noticeably dumb. Like they wanted us to remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so smart too for a game that's like, okay, the entire premise is you're on one ship. I'm sure this was an early meeting with the creative team. Like, how cool would it be just to have one ship, really get to know it? Like, oh, how much variety can we pack in? And the idea of getting around that by having another ship just crash into it, then you can jump from one to the other for just one level is such a smart idea for the level designers.
Yeah, it really is. And I think to comment on like the idea of like losing all your hope, like that's one of my favorite things. I haven't been able to watch these types of films in the pandemic because something about mean horror movies have just taken me a little bit out of it.
Sure.
But like there is something to be said of like being able to just crush your audience and like kind of leave them there, because it never really builds you back up, because like from that point on it's just a series of yes, no, to the ending. So
To maybe no,
Maybe. Whatever.
And you end up in like the situation where it's kind of like not like, because that's like the scary thing about space. Like there really is no hope outside of what you can see, because nobody can come and save you. You can't leave. You can't you can't do anything. You're stuck with what you have, and there's nothing to seek. And I feel like the writers did such an expert job of injecting it and then pulling it back away. And I really like how Kyle like pointed that out, because it's just like, that's hard to do. Because sometimes you do it and you make your audience angry, and other times you do it and you make your audience more determined, and then you just make them sad. And that's what it did.
Yeah, for sure. Jordan Holmdahl.
Like a good sad, though.
Pleasant space sad. Jordan Holmdahl wrote in, says, I loved how powerless that moment made me feel when the ship crashed in the other one. Isaac had no chance to stop that ship, even though he was manning a powerful cannon and had just taken down another enormous monstrosity. It's such a great way to tear the rug out from under players again. And K. Christian said, when Kendra told me to get on that cannon in this chunk, I had Vietnam flashbacks to Chapter 4. Luckily, this time it was much easier, and I did it on the first try instead of the 10th. Oh, congratulations, Kay. Yeah, I was definitely worried about that too, but that creature really made me laugh. The idea of just like this huge alien wad on the outside of the ship, just like, blah, blah, just like throwing everything it can find at Isaac. It's such a silly image, but hey, it works.
It's funny that like, it's like, I think the design of the last boss is very good, but then the other kind of two main bosses that you fight in this game are both just like shapeless organic masses, you know, other than I guess the brutes. But it's like in subsequent Dead Spaces, they have intermediary bosses that are also very like visually memorable, and in this it's like, well, you fight that big thing in food storage that's just like a bunch of mold with yellow spots, and then you fight this thing which is like a bunch of mold with tentacles in space, and like neither of them are really look like anything, but we do get the very good last one, so I feel like they you know, they saved the best for last at least.
Hey, Hanson, maybe you can refresh my memory, because I think you did an interview with Glenn Schofield like well after Dead Space. So he was like branching off to do his own thing, and he talked a lot about in that interview the idea of like alien life and how like we have no idea how it could function or even look like. And I think I would, based on that thought, I think he likes the idea of the formless blob as just to like, we don't know what alien life would look like. Like it could look like anything. It's just going to be this functional organic thing. We might not even recognize it, you know?
I love it. I mean, it's very thing-like in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love that idea, even if the necromorphs are a little more understandable, you know, but that's the humanified version, I guess.
And I like the last boss design, because I feel like the first time I played through, I expected it to be a Cthulhu looking thing. Like I expected it to be pure eldritch horror, something we've seen before that we all really know. And it wasn't that really. It had like the epicness of an eldritch horror in a way, but it was its own thing, which I was really like pleasantly surprised about, because I feel like a lot of the time cosmic horror, you're gonna get a very specific type of entity that you're fighting. And this wasn't that. And I remember being impressed by it the first time I played it, and then again impressed by it this time as well.
Yeah.
That was a really good boss too. And the whole sequence, and you know, the background and seeing the piece of the planet like burning up in the atmosphere, coming down and all that. Just like a really cool moment where they, you know, to be honest with you, a lot of times, like when we're making games, we know the numbers. We know that like only 30% or 25% of players even beat the game. And so when you're kind of budgeting out what you're going to spend your time and energy on, you know that if you put a bunch of time and energy onto the last sequence of the game, a huge chunk of your audience isn't going to see it. That's why so many games, the first hour is so amazing, because, you know, we've got to hook them. And the fact that they just spent that much time and put that much effort into that whole sequence, and it's probably the coolest sequence in the game.
Oh yeah.
It's the coolest boss in the game. I love the little, they make me think of like tonsils, you know, the little orange things that are hanging inside the page that you have to open up.
Tonsillectomy,
No, I'm smiling as you say this, because I've like written a not insignificant amount about exactly this thing, about how like it feels so special when something is saved for the end, because you know, like that's not economical, you know, it doesn't make like financial sense. And so like the thing where it's like you've got like 3 out of the 5 pods, and then it grabs your leg and it lifts you up, and you have been grabbed by other stuff in the game, but it doesn't feel like this where you're just dangling like
upside
100
down
feet off the ground.
Oh.
Yeah, it's so cool. I really, really like that boss.
Yeah.
Just in general, the second half of the game, they're still introducing new enemies, new enemy types, like tons of new. Did anybody let Slenderman kill them?
I don't
because it's my favorite death in the
so.
game.
Oh, it's good.
And like that stuff, that's animation, that's like work that if millions of people play this game, millions of people aren't even going to see that part, and so like when I'm playing it, I'm just like really impressed by. It's just relentless as far as the game. There's no like throwaway level, like we'll just do this and cheaply reuse this and that and whatever. It
keeps unsettling you. Like right when you get into the groove, it's like, no, here's something else.
Yeah.
Like, and that works really well. And I think the reason the ending and the final boss is also so beautiful is because it's so starkly different than anything else you've seen the entire game.
Right.
Like everything else is very blue and green, and this is warm, and like that warmth is scary. Like it's scorched, and like it's just a different type of like, I don't know. It's like a different type. There's like cold and dark hopelessness, and then there's like warm hopelessness.
We're being burned alive.
And like that is infinitely like scarier because colors make us feel things. Red is like red and warm colors are supposed to make us more energetic and happy and feel, I don't like cool tones are like more at peace, but they're also darker and gloomier and like that type of stuff. And I think like by switching the color palette, the monster design, like everything, they just kind of say we're doing something completely different now at the end of the game, and you don't know what you're gonna expect. And I think it's like a great, I hate this phrase, but it's a great cherry on top of a game that has continually thrown new things at you because it feels like a different game in some ways.
Oh yeah, and like not knowing, this is so stupid, but like when the chapter starts and you're going down there, it is this moment of like, of course you're going down to the planet, but I hadn't even thought about it consciously. So when we finally get there, it's like, oh my God, this is so refreshing and so unique. And it's not just like running down there and doing a boss fight. It's like, okay, you get to see a lot of new art. There's a lot going on as you kind of navigate this almost like puzzle sequence. But Colin Mahovlich writes in, says, I really love the final chapter of the game. Going down to the colony to fight the hive mind was a neat visual change of pace and a very enjoyable boss fight. I got some major Resident Evil boss fight vibes from it. I think that's right. Yeah.
Was it the big glowy bits that you had to shoot?
That was the key part. Yeah.
If it was Resident Evil, it just would have been a guy who like injected himself and fell off a cliff, and then that thing popped up.
Yes. It would have been Kine. Like, oh, help me. Another robot writes in on Patreon and says, I don't think I've ever said or thought a final boss was fun, but this one was fun. What I needed to do was clear. The game gave me plenty of resources and opportunities to execute without requiring controller gymnastics or hoops to jump through. I took it down in one go. I think this is precisely how a boss fight should be. And Ryan Del Vecchio says the hive mind boss fight to this day is one of the coolest bosses, just visually stunning and has such a sick design. I love Dead Space 2 more, and oh boy, was that last boss a letdown. Sorry, Zach.
I also want to highlight, I was going to say that I really like the Star Trek-y lens flare that Dead Space does, which I feel like it did several times throughout the game, but especially when you're on that planet.
Yeah.
But Star Trek, at least the J.J. Abrams one, came out in 2009. So
there we go.
This was actually
lens flare.
artful use of lens flare.
That's what JJ got it from, yeah.
But yeah, I love how it's like, it felt really inhospitable, but not artificial anymore. Now it's just like the cold light of the sun is blasting you in the face.
Yeah. Ryan said he didn't like Dead Space 2's final boss, but Zach, you should know, he says, lastly, I just wanted to add that I know Zach says he only added subtitles to the games, but I distinctly remember him from whenever I saw photos of Visceral Studios. He was always in the pictures. You could have told me the guy was the game director and I would have believed you. Regardless, I'm glad he's part of the discussion. He seems like a nice and humble person. So congratulations, Zach.
I was around. I like to be in the pictures. They take pictures when they're partying, and if they're partying, I'm there.
Okay, all right.
As a young man.
Yeah. What you said something on Twitter about being in a commercial for Dead Space 2?
Yeah, so there was this commercial where we had a couple of them. So like Isaac is in the office. We had the guy that did the mocap. So the advanced suit from Dead Space 2, which is the Dead Space suit, in my opinion, it's the one. It's like with the three blue slits for the view.
The one
It's
that's
a
in
really
PlayStation
cool
All
suit.
Stars
We had
Battle
that
Royale.
suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that suit. Yeah, I think so. We had that suit built by a professional prop company. It was tens of thousands of dollars, and it had like working hydraulic like flaps that would move around. It shot smoke from the feet. It lit up the whole thing.
Oh,
and
wow.
we would take it to conventions and all that when we were promoting the game. And so when they were done with that, they brought the guy to the studio, and then we shot a number of commercials where he's like working in a cube at Visceral, and like there's a noise in the vents, and he's like freaked out about the vents. One of the commercials we shot was like, he has the locator, and so it's like he's at his cube and just different people are coming up to his cube asking for like, hey, how do I get to conference room, whatever, or this or that. My big moment in the thing is that there's like a locator beam going into the bathrooms, and I run into the wrong one, and Beth, who was a woman who worked with me, screams at me, and then I run into the men's room because I gave me the wrong, he gave me the wrong locator.
Some good classic jokes.
That's awesome.
I'm an actor.
And were you in? Speaking of Dead Space commercials, quick tangent here.
Yeah.
Were you involved in getting the Phil Collins soundtrack in the Dead Space 3 commercial?
No, I was not. It was pretty sweet.
I love that. But
It's
it is
like a weird
so
fit, which I really
weird.
love. Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember watching that commercial or trailer. I guess it was a commercial, and just being like Phil Collins, but it was like it works, man. It works.
It
It's
does.
cool.
It really works. Yeah.
Was it like a subdued version of a Phil Collins song?
No, it was like harder core. It was like more rock version of In the
What is
Air
the,
Tonight.
I mean, what is the song? Yes, it was In the Air
Okay.
Tonight, and it's like that drum kicks up and it like pans around, and you see this giant crater.
It's like,
on the
it's
planet.
cold
It's
this time.
I was like, hell yeah, I'm pre-ordering that right now.
Betting that commercial was because of the Gears of War trailer.
Yeah.
With
Mad World?
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Like everybody around the office, like that trailer was really good, and it did it differently. Like if you give most marketing teams a Gears of War trailer, you know what's coming, and it's like right, and so like them completely switching it up like that. And yeah, like the Dead Space 3 one is really good. We had a good one for Dead Space 2 also. They had that Smashing Pumpkins song.
Tonight.
I don't know what it's called, but it's like, despite all my rage, I'm still just
sure.
a man.
Oh, yeah.
It's like fit for where Isaac was at in Dead Space 2,
I think they also used that for the Final Fantasy VII remake for a certain commercial. So Cloud and Isaac are basically the same level of tortured soul, I think. Did anybody else think of Dead Space 3 in that section here where it was outside and a little bit snowy? What was it? Just like I don't even know what was going on. There was no oxygen out there, and it just looked a little bit colder and harsher than the average amount of space. I don't know if there was actually snow on the ground. You know what I'm talking about?
No, also there was oxygen there because like Kendra was just walking around with her helmet off, and it was like, what the hell? Like this is
Wait, what?
you can just do this on what in the last level?
No, not that part. There's one, I forget what chapter it's in exactly, but it was surprisingly tough where you have to make a run and there's a bunch of lockers and there's definitely no oxygen and you have to go get one of the other pieces to remove the thingamajig from the what's it. Never mind. It was snow-ish. Let's see. Speaking of, objective guidelines, Jesse L writes in and says, I've been wondering why my first half playthrough was almost 7 hours. But after listening to the first discussion, I realized it's because I wasn't aware of the objective guidelines and have been instead navigating via the map only. I'd say I've spent at least an hour in that thing.
You should get an achievement for that.
Yeah, that is an amazing way to play. And then Jesse L says, I also wanted to shout out Zach for adding a fun behind-the-scenes wrinkle to the dive. Funnily enough, last night after finishing the episode for the deepest dive, I sat down to read some Press Reset, the book from Jason Schreier, only to realize that I was on the chapter about Zach's career. So there we go.
Book, yeah.
You're everywhere. Do a lot of people bring that up to you?
I get like maybe a message a week on Twitter. And
Okay.
I've yet to have like, all just supportive. Like, hey, I read your story. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I never know what to say. Thanks. I just don't know what to say.
Yes,
right?
it was.
Do people
It
bug
was
you
very cool.
about like, hey, tell us more about that Amy Hennig Star Wars game that you worked on, please?
Yeah, I think that most people don't. They can just. I did an interview with you where I said everything I could possibly say about that. So I just send them the link to that.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the interview I did that made the EA lawyers send me a letter.
What? Really?
Oh, no.
Can you talk about this?
Numerous, interactions with them, and actually, to be honest, they're super cool. They're like, hey, like. You're talking about stuff you're probably not supposed to talk about. Like, could you pipe down a little bit? Like, yeah, sorry.
That classic legalese.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope I didn't get you in trouble.
If the lawyers aren't talking to you, you're not trying hard enough, man.
Hey, man. Yeah, not living on the edge. Kyle, that's your mission for the rest of this deepest dive is make something so controversial that a lawyer has to reach out to you. So get ready.
All right.
Okay.
I'm thinking about it.
Okay, perfect. Dudley Kyle Lawhorn writes in and says, I got so frustrated at having to plant the distress beacon in chapter 7 because my dumb self didn't realize I had to run to the outside of the cargo hold and ended up dying 4 times to those sweeping arms on that asteroid.
I was glad I was streaming because I was like, I don't understand what I have to do. And someone in the chat was like, run to the other side. But yeah, I was like, I didn't remember this part. And then it turned out there were also tethers on like the outside part too that you needed to go to. And it's like, once you knew what you had to do, it was kind of a cool section. But like, I just didn't like Mario Galaxy connect that I could just like run around the entire
It looks
sphere.
like it's a barrier there.
It doesn't quite look big enough.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like something designed for you to run through. I didn't remember this either. And I was like, I was like jumping to the thing and trying to jump back really quick and like plant. And I didn't, it took me a minute to figure out like what the heck I'm supposed to do here. And I looked at my objectives. It was like the 3 tethers. And I remembered, oh, right, there's like other ones. Oh, right, they're outside. But I wouldn't have been able to figure it out. I would have had to look at the internet if I hadn't beat it before and just saw that objective and it reminded me.
Yeah, I had to look that up because I had absolutely no idea. And so I looked it up and I'm hoping I'm misremembering this. I think the internet says it like, oh, you can time it, but I don't know if they're dealing with a speed run or what. But they suggested that I actually just go from the inside and land on the inside area of the asteroid. And you can plant the beacon because you just hit Y fast enough, and then the animation doesn't even go. But then if you jump off, it technically plants the beacon. So it's like this weird janky thing. So before the arms came through, so then I was like, is that really what I was supposed to do? That seems very broken. I had no idea. I was trying to like slow down the arms with stasis as they were coming, and nothing was working. And for a game that has so much VO about telling you exactly what to do, it seems like that was an area where they could have one line about like, go outside.
So many puzzles that's literally slow down this machine part using stasis. It's like that's the solution to most puzzles
in that room even. Yeah, for like the spinny things, you got to shoot the things that are holding it or whatever.
For sure. The stasis not working on that machine and it working on everything else. If you're going to do that, then there needs to be a reason why.
Right.
And them not giving you a reason why stasis just didn't work on this thing was a little weird.
Isaac, we figured out stasis doesn't work on asteroids. No one knows why.
No one knows why, but it's a thing.
I will say I kept dying, and then my husband, who's never played a minute of Dead Space, was like, what if you went outside? And I was like,
dang it.
Very
Very smart.
I love you. Thank you.
He sounds great. Send him over to my house. I'll start playing, please.
The other sort of hurdle, because that probably was where I died the most, just as a matter of trying to figure things out. The other place that I died more than I probably should have was where you have to push the big box as the engines are firing off.
Oh, the fire around you? Yeah.
Oh,
And it was like, and it was annoying because it was like, I know what I'm supposed to do. My elbow just keeps getting caught and Isaac's like on fire all of a sudden. You know what I mean? It was just like inconsistent.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, chapter 7 around that asteroid sequence, there's that audio log of that guy, this poor guy who's shooting off all of his limbs. And you just hear him in the audio log. He's like, all right, and one more to go here. He's like counting you off. It felt very South Park again. I'm just like, I think even in that South Park Stick of Truth game. God, remember that bit, Kyle? We were on the alien spaceship and the guy's like, I'm just searching for any food I can find, but all I can find are these lousy audio logs. They're everywhere. And he's recording those. And the idea of like this guy recording himself shooting his limbs off. It's like, my God. And then he like stops the recording with his nose. It's all very unclear. But shout out to
future,
my
man. Everything's going to be, we're already there. Everything's recorded all the time.
I guess that's true. We're not being recorded right now, are we?
He was doing a TikTok.
Oh, God. I do
like,
hope,
share, subscribe. I'm gonna cut off these limbs real quick. One more special effects.
Although I will say, I do want a TikTok dance for when the remaster comes out, where people just do like this with their
the necromorph
arms,
stuff?
like the necromorphs.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And they
Please,
can,
EA, make a TikTok challenge out of that.
and then there's like the hyper
to Phil
mode.
Collins in the air tonight. It'll be perfect.
That's it.
And then they can have the hyper mode of that challenge where it's like, the other guys from the USS Valor who are just like pure glitch. Like they don't even defy the rules of physics. And like, I love that weird.
I want to talk about those guys for a second because I think they are very clever. And one of the reasons that I like them is they're very fast. However, I think they look faster than they are. Like it's very clever animation where like they're so jittery, and especially when they're crawling, they go like and so it feels like they're coming at you a million miles an hour.
All right, I'll chill with the Phil Collins.
They're coming at you at a million miles an hour in a way that like makes you panic more than if it was just a normal necromorph like running at you at that speed. You know, they just like they emphasize how fast they are in a way that made me freak out.
Yeah, that's a really good call out.
Yeah, most enemies
They also got that quick. They do a quick side jump.
Yeah,
right? They're running at you, shooting. They have that quick side jump. Yeah,
it's very satisfying though on the Valor,
and also their heads are like. They're slightly different design than the necromorphs, where they've kind of got these. It's like their heads are like scooped out. It's
right,
gross.
yeah,
They're
and
gross.
Because they're the military and they have stasis already. Then like the fusion with the stasis is what broke time and let them jump all over the place for whatever weird logic that is, but that totally worked. But I love that room too.
I love that little.
It is cool.
It is cool. It was just enough to be plausible and like, make it not feel like too video gamey.
It checks out, yeah. But yeah, they weren't that scary to go up against, especially that one room where they kept coming at you and that laser was like rotating around and just kept slicing them into a million pieces. Like, oh, this is great. These idiots are going to keep running into this thing. Let's see. We have an attack corgi who says, I love how this game messes with your expectations. I love in Chapter 8 when you expect an attack on the Chapter 8 tram to and from the comms array, so the devs just throw a baby necromorph in the way and it immediately gets run over. Did you shoot the dangling body on the way over? Yeah, I think that body has like a jump scare where it like lights up or something and kind of rotates in some way, but no, I didn't shoot that one on the way over.
A very good like just physics tidbit is that the body is stuck to the tram the whole time it's accelerating, and then when it stops it goes like woo, like it keeps going because it still has inertia. It's very good.
Gmax Thurin writes in and says, in Chapter 8, when you're riding the tram and ram into the body hanging from the ceiling, my game totally glitched out. The body ragdolled and stretched all over the place, making what would have been a serious scare feel super goofy. Anyone else run into glitchy stuff? Not really.
Physics stuff for sure. I had one where I like stasised one of the like pregnant ones and then killed it, and the whole body, because it was still floating in stasis, got like stuck on me like a hood. And, like, walked around. And it's got the sound effects the whole time.
Oh God!
I love that because I love what you get from having all that physics, and like, hey, there's gonna be, you know, you talked about Nicole walking through it. Kendra has that sequence as well where she walks through a bunch of bodies.
Right.
And it ends up looking goofy, but it gives you those moments. I mean, especially like when you, I guess it's with the shuttle, when you turn the gravity back on and all the necromorphs you had killed are like floating and they all like fall down, and like, I don't know, I really love those moments. But yeah, I definitely have had some weird stuff with it.
Not when you turn the gravity back on, but I've noticed like when I go into rooms in this game, and this is the case in a lot of games, it's like you see bodies just like boom, like land a little bit right when you enter the room. Is it just that this is, I don't know anything about game design, game development, but like, is it just that the physics are turning on in that area right when the door opens, so you get to see like that enact? Or do you have any insight into why in games in general? Kyle, do you know what I'm talking about when you walk in the door and you kind of see everything kind of like set into place?
It's the, I don't know particularly like how this game is set up, but I do know how Dead Space 3 was set up. Usually like when you're going through a door, you walk into the next room, the door closes, they load that room out, they start loading this room in, you open the door, the moment all the assets are finished loading in, they pop open the door, so they can get you in there, close that door, load that out, right? It's just a sequence of that. And so probably what it is those objects are placed at a location. They have like a XYZ axis location, but we also have physics. And so there's just a little wiggle when it spawns in. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
You see that in a lot of games.
Dead Space. It's certainly not exclusive to Dead Space, but there are like a couple sequences where like you'll see a character animating, like one of those humans who are alive, right? And you come across them and they kill themselves. Where it's like it's animation. They kill themselves, and then physics turn on, and they just kind of go like,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
That's not exclusive to Dead Space. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I got majorly distracted by. I mentioned this like for the first half, but still in this. When you just had the bodies and you can kind of kick them around. Yeah. And so like there were a couple points just like, ooh, I can kick them. And I would just like run through them and make them like move. Didn't help my playthrough at all, but I was like, oh, look what I can do with this. This body shouldn't go this way.
I was endlessly delighted during one of my little zero-G space jumps when I saw that on the bottom of Isaac's shoes, there was like some blood. And I don't know if that's like in the aftermath of the stomp, because I don't think it's there all the time, but that's like one of those tiny details. It's like, oh, that's cool that they put just a little bit of blood on the sole of his shoes to show all the bodies he's been walking through. Also, at this game, in this section, it's the closest that I got to kind of doing some save scummy stuff, because I had a really tough time with those really fast guys. And so anytime that I would notice that there's one of those like Minox from Star Wars flying around, which are surprisingly hard to kill, the weird flying things that infest. Yeah, every time I saw one of those in the room, it's like, okay, I'm just going to intentionally die just so I can run back into this room and immediately just kill all of those. And then it's just night and day for the difficulty of that room, because it's just killing a couple of stupid birds instead of 5 bad guys charging you.
There's a very funny thing with those where it's like the last time you see, remind me his name, the unitology guy who is bopping
Mercer.
People in the head.
Yeah, Mercer.
Yeah, so the last time you see Mercer...
Did you say bopping people in the head?
Yeah.
You know.
Like Peter Rabbit. Yeah.
But he walks out and he's kind of like, all right, I'm going to go like kind of achieve my destiny or whatever, which clearly means getting turned into a necromorph by one of those. But it's like, when I walked in, it was right next to the door, and so I killed it before it turned him into something, and I was just like, oh, well, there goes his destiny. Like, all he wanted in life was to be turned into a necromorph, and I did not let it happen.
I will look upon the face of God, and not so much. Yeah. Also, before we get attacked on YouTube, for a lot of people throwing comments out there, I realized it's Bunny Foo-Foo. It's not Peter Rabbit that bops people on the head. So I just want to let that out there for everybody. I know
all you Bunny Foo-Foo heads in the audience.
Yeah, the Bunny Foo-Foo subreddit's going to come attack in this video. I can feel it right now. Let's see. We have... Oh, I had a question. Okay, so not like the treasure chest, but the other treasure chest that looked like that one Lego piece where there's kind of like the thin blue light on the ground. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then they have like the red light variants. Do the red light variants only exist because when you go back into those areas, sometimes they turn those to blue just to make it more dynamic? I didn't do the math, but every once in a while I would think that I got everything. Then when I was running back into some areas, I was like, oh, these are now blue. And so it would have been smart of them to change that just so it wasn't a sterile environment.
Definitely unlock some of those. I noticed it in one room in particular because I'd written down, I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about all the locked chests and whether or not, I think the idea there is that like it's supposed to add sort of realism to the environment, right? That, hey, you can't get into everything or whatever. You just have to scavenge the stuff you can get into. Yeah. But like, did anybody have any strong thoughts on like, man, it was really annoying that there are all these chests theoretically with stuff I could use and I just couldn't get into them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a kind of an evil thing as well. It's like there'll be a row of lockers and there'll be ammo in one of them or whatever. Yeah. I kind of wondered, because I know this game does the same kind of dynamic, like giving you ammo and health and stuff. Like if you were doing really badly, would more of those be unlocked?
Ooh.
I don't know.
Oh,
that'd be interesting.
Probably not. I think it would just decide this will be a health pack instead of like credits. But who knows?
Yeah.
I will say that questions like this make me realize I don't pay attention to games so much as I should. Because Because I am just, oh, cool, got this, next room.
Right,
Like,
right.
I tend to not, even like when it's like resource scarcity, I don't think about it too much. Maybe that's just the type of player that I am.
No, I think that's a lot of people. I really only do for the deepest dive here. But look, Zach doesn't know the story for the games that he worked on. So look, there's no harm in not paying attention.
I can give you like the high level. It's just
I know.
there are definitely fans of the Dead Space franchise that I can't.
No, you can't compete with that.
You tell me, because I don't know.
Ask anyone at Bungie what the hell is happening in Destiny. No one knows.
Hey, look over there. Yeah. Yeah, so much of this game, though, is just like treasure hunting with goodies, that you pick up so much stuff. Some of these rooms, it's like, okay, all right, Gabe, I've gotten enough goodies here. You've put sparklies all over the place. It's a lot, but I guess when you can store stuff, it's so handy.
I will say one of the things that I find interesting was, and this is something I did notice, was I felt like I got way more ammo at the front of the game than I did at the end of the game. And I don't know if that was just me not paying attention and running through bodies too quickly, but like I noticed a difference, or maybe I was just...
If you were loaded up with ammo, then I think the game's not going to give you as much ammo.
That makes sense, yeah.
That's why I never buy ammo, because I know that the game won't let me not have bullets, which isn't actually always true. Sometimes it will, but for the most part, if I'm running around with 3 in my plasma cutter, they're going to give me, plasma energy.
That makes
in the
sense.
next box.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I liked in chapter 8 when Hammond, he finally gets, he's released from his rig jamming system and all that fun stuff. And then he's like, okay, that's it. F this mission. Let's try and go home. We should cancel this mission. I was like, didn't we cancel the mission like in chapter 1? This idea, like, we were still trying to do your mission, man. So what?
He was always on the mission. I do like that, we should take a moment to remember Hammond.
That's right.
Because his last kind of thing is like, go without me. Like, just go, and, he has an unfortunate, the worst part about that is right there.
I know.
I know it's a brute, but it's like, bro, I can handle that brute, no problem.
Yeah, but you can't handle glass. That's what really gets you. So
yes.
A pane of glass.
Yeah, Dan R. wrote in about that exact same thing, thinking it's silly that you can't just bust through that glass. Yeah, that's true. But Chris Palaska writes in and says, I think it would have been way more interesting if Hammond died and was possessed by some super strong necromorph as a boss or something. I totally thought that's where it was going to go, that he's going to come back in some way.
I like that he was just kind of pulverized. It's also just an interesting story beat that, like, we definitely had suspicions about him at the end of the last section, and he died heroically, and Kendra rubbed our dead girlfriend in our faces and then did an evil laugh.
Yeah, so that's true.
It was like, how the turntables, they got us.
Kendra's a certain word that I won't say.
Yeah.
What's that?
I respect Hammond.
Meaning.
I take it all back. It turns out he's not a bad guy. I was fully expecting, but it's the classic kind of like I don't know, Avalon or Secret Hitler thing, or I guess Among Us is a more common thing, where it's like the fact that Kendra got out of the gate accusing Hammond so hard. It's like, okay, all right, well now I'm just focused on Hammond. I'm not really even thinking about Kendra so much. So the game got me there.
I don't know that Hammond as a character it's not necessarily just good or just evil. Like, he's definitely the one at the beginning that refuses to abort the mission, is the reason you crash land, and
right.
He seems to have, also ulterior motives that maybe you just never figure out because he ends up dying, right? Like, it definitely doesn't seem like
he dies a hero rather than living long enough to become the villain.
Right.
Yeah, he probably would have been dueling with Kendra at the end about whatever their priorities were.
I also think that, like, his death, like, as much as, like, it is heroism, I also think that, like, it also serves, like, a really good, like, narrative point. Because, like, he's the guy through everything that is very steadfast. We can get this done. We're good. We can keep going. And then when your person who is literally the one that says keep moving forward dies, where do you go?
The only place you can go is to have your dead girlfriend then come in as the voice telling exactly Isaac where he should go, which is like they needed to do that because there was nobody else at that point that could talk to him.
I do appreciate that Kendra, like you mentioned it last week, Hanson, and you were like, I hope Hammond doesn't just turn into some evil guy who wants all the power. I appreciate that Dead Space is not that typical video game story. Like Kendra's motivations still seem pretty corporate. You know what I mean? She's just there to appease her bosses.
I also appreciate a cold, callous woman in a game. Like a lot of the times, like that's the thing. Like, and there's a lot of the way she ends, like to Kyle's point, where she's pretty calculated. She's in control of things. She's not really crazy. Like she's not like everybody else. You know? Like, and that to me, I actually think is a really good. It's not like a tropes version, but it's a different representation of like women we usually see who play villain roles. Like most of the time a woman is a villain in a video game or any other form of media. She's usually in some way hysterical or mad or has like a love motive, which that couldn't go here. Like Isaac's the one with the love motive. But like there are elements of like good villainy that we don't usually see in women. Because women are supposed to be nurturing and kind, and our type of evil is the subversion of that. But you don't really get that with Kendra. Kendra's just like, gotta take care of the bosses. Like
super cold, just cold like, business.
She is seeing her brother, but other than that, she's very logical and cold about it. Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
She handles it. She compartmentalizes her brother.
That's right.
Better than. I mean, look who's left at this point, Kyne and Isaac.
Right.
Yeah.
Kendra's the most sane one here.
She's in control. In her mind, she's in control of it. And she very much acts like she has control and agency. And there's just something very refreshing to that.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I like mean ladies.
Okay.
We don't get to be mean ladies a lot of the time.
Well, there we go.
You know what's a funny plot beat is when she takes control of the ship and drives off and you're like, oh no, and then you like go into another room and push a button and you just pull the shit back. And she's like, Isaac, you shouldn't have pushed that button.
How
like,
dare you, dude?
I didn't think you would know about that one.
Yeah, Miguel Medjai says, I yelled out a get over here when I recalled Kendra's ship. Very natural. And Yarf brought up that exact point of saying like, so Kendra is this intelligent mastermind, but didn't think about the fact that Isaac is just like an engineer who knows how works. And it's like, okay, well, here I press this button and this happens. But yeah, Logan Cap says, Kendra's deliberate attempts to make Isaac mistrust Hammond throughout the entire game perfectly set the stage for the big reveal in the game's final moments. First, she mentioned something about her department searching for the marker for a long time while Kyne is preparing the shuttle, hinting that she is some sort of deep cover operative. I thought this was so well done. I audibly shouted, "It was you!" at my monitor when Kenra mentioned that she already knew about Nicole's death before their shuttle even landed on the Ishimura. Such a great moment, says Logan.
Just also, like, to point that out too, like, she knew what was going to manifest for him, and she knew that she could have exploited it.
Yeah. Honestly, she had a lot of faith in a guy who was, like, clearly losing it before everything went to hell. She was like, I know this guy's girlfriend is dead, but, like, it's still cool to, you know, have him fix the life support systems of our ship.
He's the only one who can do it.
It's, I'll get off Kendra after this, but
sure.
Like, there is just something like really kind of unnerving about somebody who can manipulate trauma that way. Because that's what she's doing. She's manipulating his trauma to push him where she needs him to go. And essentially the entire time that she's throwing the misdirects at Hammonds, she's making Isaac not only like dependent on Vision Nicole, but also like on her to an extent. Like if you cut somebody off from everybody else, then they're only left with you. So like she's a very well-written character. I very much like her.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
You know, when she kind of turns and she has the mustache twirling moment where she's kind of unveiling it all and, you know, watch the full Nicole speech. I like what that does for Isaac as well, because you can tell her expectation is that like Nicole is this carrot that she's dangling or that's been dangling, keeping Isaac going. And so she's like, okay, I'm done with you. Go ahead and watch the video. Nicole's dead. She's expecting, well, Isaac's going to give up at this point, like, because he doesn't, that's it. That's the only reason the guy's here anyway. Yeah. All the rest of this stuff is way over his head. He doesn't understand any of this, right? And so like that moment where, and again, I wish Isaac had a voice there, because it's like that moment when Isaac decides, no, F this, like I'm gonna like, you know, I'm gonna do this, right? I thought that was like a really cool moment for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason Camarano says, as Kendra is bug squished, then flung to the side, an audible flatlining sound can be heard, prefixed by a crackling sound similar to that of a radiation Geiger counter. Since this game plays homage to many different movies and games, this seems so reminiscent of the sound of the death sound in Half-Life. Do y'all find other small things like that? Yeah, do you think?
I mean, it's the sound that it makes when Isaac dies, too. Like, that's just the rig flatlining sound is the like.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
That beep, I don't know. It's hard.
It
to
does sound
not-
like Half-Life.
Yeah, I was about to say not to sort of hear Half-Life in that. And I mean, Half-Life is kind of an undeniable inspiration for any game like this that is like a long-term story-driven action.
No
game in one
cutscenes.
consistent location. Yeah.
Yeah.
With a silent protagonist.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I always love that moment in any media where seeing a person die, like Hammond or Kendra here. It's always like, they could come back. They could come back. And like with Kendra, it's just so clear. It's like beating her against the wall. It might even like rip her limbs off. So, okay, just so you know, she is super dead. And then we're going to play a flatline sound on top of that. Please do not be confused about Kendra's fate.
I was gonna say, I also hold in like horror movies, like the worse you are as a character, the worse death you get. So like that makes sense.
Right.
No, she gets taken out by the biggest bad.
Also, she deserved it because one of the most effective moments in this game, again for me, was when you're dragging around the marker for so long. I love that they actually make you interact with this thing that is at the core of the story. That's my favorite thing, is like being in the room with a bad guy in a game or actually interacting with this super important part of the story. And I love that after dragging it all that way, you're then behind the glass as Kendra is then wheeling it back along the trail from where you came. It's like, no, look, I just lugged it all that way. Like, it's such an effective way for you to really hate her at the end. The Nicole stuff, the manipulation stuff is one thing, but dragging that marker back along the tram, that's right out.
Also, just the act of being that whole dragging that thing along is really cool. And I didn't feel it so much this time because I knew kind of where the story was going and I've played the whole franchise, yada, yada. But like the first time I played it, I was like, I don't want to be near this thing.
Oh,
like,
fun.
Everyone who has come close to this thing has lost their mind. Like, I don't want to be close to it. Like, get it away from me.
It's just a replica.
That's true.
Yeah. They did a very good job with it, apparently, though. Like this the weird thing that so the U.S. government or some government on Earth. What's that? EarthGov has just completely reverse engineered it. I assume like the actual real marker is a factor in 2 and 3 at some point then?
Well, there's another replica in 2, and the way that they reverse engineer that one is actually significantly more interesting. It's like a big plot point that I won't spoil, but they do. It's like the production of markers continues to be something that the series is talking about.
Interesting. Joshua,
I personally just suck at the tethering with like the little thing. I like even the first time we had to use it, like I just don't know how to move Isaac effectively to make it be like a nice movement. So I just wanted that part to be over.
Yeah, I was happy. I mean, even though it is a little bit janky at times, moving stuff around, I was happy that they went for kind of more puzzly stuff.
Oh yeah,
with kinesis
so, like,
in the second half.
Like most of my time, like gaming, if it's not like a co-op game I play with my husband, it's always like a puzzler. So like I appreciate it. I just suck in like any game game where you have me move my character to like sling something across a way or something.
Yeah.
Also, as the resident PC player, on a thumbstick, you could just like hold to the left to move it. On a mouse, I had to go like I had to keep scrubbing it forward and back because you can't just like hold right to look right, consistently. And so it was a very awkward process to move it along the rails.
Oh yeah,
it was fine.
Yeah, I like that one room. I thought it was interesting where they had like a bunch of, I don't know what you'd call them, large crates, boxes. What's a train car called? What do you call that thing?
You have to slide
like a shipping container?
kind of.
Yeah, shipping container things. Yeah, but it's like a bunch of those little ones. You kind of have to like arrange them in like a light puzzly way to get through. But I thought it was a cool idea that in the room before, it was Mercer on that audio log, and the audio log's like looping this lore. And like, that's such a smart way to drill that lore into your head more, is you have to hear that loop as you're trying to solve a puzzle. It's like, okay, don't forget this no matter what. It's
and then you have to do it back when the regenerator is chasing you. And
Right.
it's like,
That is cool.
before you could take your time, and this time you're like,
Yes, yeah, for sure. Joe Halaska submits a comment over on Patreon and says, in Chapter 9, there's a really impressive little moment right after the section where you fling the glowing orbs into space. Oh yeah, remember that whole radiation thing?
Green balls.
I want to call out, I was very proud of myself because I had shot like all but the last space lock out, where it's like you shoot them and it opens up and it's like, wait a minute, I should get all the orbs close before I open the door. And then I did that, and then they all just kind of like sucked out by themselves. And
Oh, that's nice.
I was very happy.
Yeah, at this point I had to look up like, what is the deal with radiation being green? Why is that a default? It's not actually turning things green, right? And it turns out, based on a very quick Google search, no, that's just from radium, which is back in the 50s and 60s for like the glow in the dark stuff. So that's why we connect radiation with being green, but there's nothing inherently green about the concept of radiation. But it's like, well, we know that a glowing green beach ball is going to make Geiger counter sounds.
They use green shots because, of course, you use green shots because it's space and your lasers either have to be green or red.
Right, because it pops more. Yeah,
It checks out.
there we go.
I'm just like, so radiation looks this way because of glow sticks.
Yeah,
The Hulk
sure.
is green because of glow sticks, guys.
That's true. These are revelations for all of us. Let's see. But Joe says, after the glowing orbs, as soon as you walk into the next corridor, you see a creature quickly dart off to Isaac's left down a hallway. When you walk up to where it was standing and turn to face toward the direction it ran, the lighting is set up to cast Isaac's shadow on the wall on the left. It actually made me jump slightly because I was already wary of what was on my left side due to watching the creature run that way. So whoever came up with the idea to make a dark shadow appear at that exact spot in the player's field of vision was brilliant.
I heard that was Zach's idea.
Really? Wow. There we go. I think the biggest jump scare in this entire game for me was just like a pretty standard enemy of just maybe they were a little bit quiet behind me, but it was just running down a hallway or something, then just turned around. And it wasn't like a big set piece moment or anything. It was like, oh, the fact that one of them was there, I actually gave like a bah! And that was, I think, the most that it got me, but it worked.
Or that's the final jump scare.
Yeah, but that one did not. I don't think I flinched in a big way with the weird Nicole face.
There are a couple times when they keep the enemies quiet, where like they kind of change probably their sound AI or whatever to like sneak up on you. And so there were a couple times when I like turned around and there was something right behind me that hadn't made a peep up until that point. And that really, those made me jump.
Anytime I saw the exploding orange glowy guys in front of me, I'm like, even though they're not making sound, I will just assume there are two behind me as well. Like that is always my cue to like, remember to turn around. I wish there was a quick turn, but remember to turn around to look at one of these goobers. Let's see. Jordan Edmond writes in and says, Chapter 10 is by far the best chapter in the game, environment-wise. All of the unitologist iconography, the fancy executive suites, the zero-G basketball court. Before we get to that sweet basketball, Kyle, because I know you're dying to talk about your love of basketball. I think you're totally right. The art in this chapter, I think, is awesome. And I thought it was more varied in the second half than I was worried about. I think in the first half, it was like, okay, it's a lot of samey environments. And people were in saying the second half was also pretty samey. But even like, I think it's chapter 9, I feel like the siding of the ship starts to look more kind of like Isaac's horizontal slits and stuff. And then the environments in chapter 10, where it's kind of the executive suites, it looks a lot like Prey's reboot from 2017, you know, just kind of like that red and gold look. But Harrison Holt McHale here says, I want to use my comment. You get one use, one shot, to give a huge shout out to Z-Ball. First, what a great idea to take advantage of the zero-G and kinesis mechanics. It is a bit clunky, but it's fine for a fun thing. But my favorite thing about it is the challenge is that the challenge is easy. If you just want to get the power node and leave, then you can beat the minimum score quite easily. But if you want to relax, have a bit of fun, and do some wacky stuff in zero-G, then you can, which is a welcome break from the stresses of the main game. Robert Cassidy then replied to this comment on Patreon and said, "Is this a zero-G basketball? I couldn't figure out how to play." Then Harrison Holt McHale says, "Yeah, you have to jump between the glowing platforms to build a multiplier and then grab the ball and shoot it through the hoops at the end. There's a shot clock on Isaac's back as a time limit for each shot. You can cheese it. Don't go for multipliers. You'll get 15 points every time if you just stand in the front and shoot straight away." Is that your experience, Kyle?
Yeah, I actually don't have a ton to say about it. The first time I played Dead Space, I was confused by the rules and I found it frustrating, and I was like, this sucks, and like I wish it wasn't even here because it's just this distracting that's frustrating me. But this time playing through it, I listened to the rules and it's actually like a fun little thing, and I like how it does fit into the context of the ship.
Yeah,
like it doesn't feel like a shoot and mini game. It feels like, you know, you're in the gym of the ship that has unfortunately been overtaken by necromorphs, and I'm sure Kendra was like watching me because she's a creeper, being like, "What the hell is Isaac doing?" Like he's playing
Isaac's
basketball.
got hops.
But yeah, I ended up playing it and like the shooting range too. Like I went ahead and did all of it, and I found it like a nice little, you know, calm moment between all the necromorph shooting and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I got an achievement for it, so I was happy.
Yeah.
It's fun world building. I mean, we know like how important, like how much astronauts need to work out, you know, is like something that I guess, although they do have artificial gravity here, but like in this level, the difference between like the crew quarters where the bunk beds are literally so close together that you have to like slide them to be able to walk through them. And then you go to like the captain's quarters and they each get like individual rooms and they have this basketball game and whatever. Like it is that good kind of alien, like this is kind of a little bit about class and about, you know, like working and stuff. And none of it is thrown in your face, but like, it's here, you know, and we're thinking about how different people live differently on this ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being the first time I played it, I was really annoyed. Similar to Kyle. Like I was like, why is this here? I just want to get back to my game. This is too much. And then now I had a very similar experience. I was like, I'm just going to play this. Like I just kind of like just messed around in that room for quite a while. I was like, I like this. This is nice.
Yeah.
I'm not panicking. I'm not scared.
Although
this is nice.
Jaren writes in, he says, "My favorite aspect of the game is how necromorphs attack in areas you feel safe. Safe zones, the store, the upgrade bench, etc. When I got ambushed in the Z-Ball arena, I legit jumped. It really caught me off guard because I thought for sure it would be clear of enemies. I think the only place in the game you never get attacked are the tram stations, perhaps because it could interfere with loading to a new area." Yeah, that could be.
That's a good point.
Victor Pham writes in and says, "What are your thoughts on the build-up to the regenerating hunter in Chapter 10? I thought all the small appearances and stuff leading up to the actual chase created a really effective sense of dread. And I also appreciated the actual gameplay portion of it didn't overstay its welcome, and so the tension was maintained, and finally, killing it felt really cathartic." And then Danny Yorkis says, this as a reply to that, "This is my first time realizing you can see the hunter for a moment when you go down the elevator in Chapter 7. You get a flash of that thing being on the loose again."
I think we talked about this for the first half. Like, it does a really good job of like slowly introducing you to things you're going to see later, like kind of like whetting your appetite a little bit and then like doing the full reveal that builds it up really well.
Yeah, and for this one especially, he's back for just long enough that you're like, this guy again, you know, like we thought we froze you. Like I thought that was the end of it. And so having him pop up, scare you again, and then get to melt him with a jet engine is like exactly the amount I would have wanted to fight it.
Yeah. Yep. It's really perfect. When he was first in that area, I think I tried to run into the little escape ship and like he was too big and he couldn't get through. So I'm like, okay, good. This is a good spot to stop and take some notes. So it's like watching him walk in place in the doorway in the little spaceship as I was taking notes. And then like one of those stupid, you know, super fast jock guys ran in there and like nudged him apparently enough in, but then they were both in the tiny tram with me. It's like, oh my God, this is nightmarish. But I got out of there just fine.
I paid that enemy off really well. I like that the second time, you know, earlier he's alone. Every time you encounter him, it's maybe there's a necromorph here or there, but basically he's alone. And now you're having to deal with him and other necromorphs at the same time and a puzzle. And just when it starts, you know, to your point, Jacob, just when it starts to feel a little bit long, it's like, okay, We're going to fry this guy to a crisp, move on.
Yep. It's really perfect. Also, I liked in chapter 10 that they just seems like they're going full tilt into the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, just basically playing on loop in the background. And also, I think this is the chapter where it starts to really get into the basically the Zerg creep goop on the floor. And then when Isaac's walking over, he's doing that kind of like,
Love that stuff.
you know, that Isaac icky walk. Of, I don't like it. He can handle space, but something icky on the ground is way beyond it.
I thought you haven't played Dead Space 2, right, Hanson?
No.
Because that's his voice.
Are you
in Dead Space
serious?
2. You nailed it.
Wow, I had no idea.
Oh no, Necromorphs! I'm sad now. Oh.
Did anybody else? I guess you all played the game before, so you knew it. But there's that scene where you're walking up, and there's a blonde lady who like shoots herself in the head and doesn't say anything around this area, and I totally thought that was Kendra. I was like, that's a weird way for that character to go out, but I guess. And then she was calling me up like 30 minutes later. And it's like, okay, that's just, there's more than one blonde person in space. Got it.
It was. Ooh.
Oh my God. Weird. Let's see. Joshua Duproy says, do you all remember your initial reactions to Nicole's suicide scene playing? Do y'all remember your initial reactions to Nicole's suicide scene playing the game back when it originally came out? I remember at the time not really giving it much thought, maybe because it's a horror game about chopping off alien body parts in space. But in retrospect, it's a pretty serious topic to cover in a game released in 2008. Anybody have thoughts on that one?
Yeah.
It floored me. It really floored me. Like that entire, like, it was, I don't know. It is very much that, and I talked about it in the last one, like, and even here, like, it's that human piece of horror where it's kind of like, it's not necessarily horrific, but it's unsettling because you can kind of map yourself into it. And then you realize at the same time that everything you've been doing doesn't matter. And so like, it's just like a confluence of everything. And I remember not really thinking so much about the suicide aspect and more about the like unraveling the story in my head going backwards. Cause it's like, everything that I just saw, everything that I've understood, and I just kind of like, I don't know. It was a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to give the game the credit of saying, like, this is a heavy subject matter to tackle, because it's like, it's not talking about
it doesn't really tackle
a mental illness. You know, it's like people
right.
killing themselves in horror movies and stuff happens long before we were like,
we've seen it happen like multiple times at this point.
Every character has killed themselves. Yeah.
But I think what I did really like and what I was affected by is kind of retracing. It's like, okay, so this happened at the end of that tape, which means that like at some point before the game even started, Isaac like watched this whole thing and then was like consciously or not just like, nope. Like I am, you know, like I am kind of rejecting the end of this. I'm going to rewatch this tape and I'm going to stop it before the bad thing happens. And like, that is a very, you know, that basically implying that like your character has been mentally unstable, you know, from the first moment. And you didn't know that was like a pretty exciting revelation to me.
Yeah.
I think it was more so that they were hiding the message. I know we talked about this at the opening, but that Kendra was like cutting the message off or something. That's how I read that scene.
Oh, really?
It's not. It's that Jacob's right. It's that Isaac is already crazy and manifesting things in his mind. Even before we even see him. Right. That he's kind of been, and crazy is weird because like, even with your point about like suicide or mental health, we're not dealing with like depression or it's like alien.
Madness.
It's also, but it's like space madness tapped into grief. Like it's coming from a very real place. Mm-hmm. And when you map it backwards, it makes sense that he is unstable because everybody else is like, we have to do these things, Isaac. And he's like, but Nicole. Mm-hmm. So like, it's kind of like that single track mind. Like, as much as like it is madness, I think that like what makes it compelling in a character and why unraveling the story in your head as you work backwards from the realization, like it is rooted in grief. Like him stopping that and refusing to accept it and then like just saying I have to get Nicole. Like, he didn't say it, but like the main focus being I have to get Nicole the entire time. Like that's that's denial. That's a staging green.
Yeah.
It's also with her. Sorry, the last point on this is like everybody else that kills themselves in the game, and there are plenty of them. It's always in like a really over the top, like horrific. They're cutting off their limbs, an audio thing, or they're shooting their head off, or they're letting an infector like stick a spike into their brain, and it's all like they're fully crazy. Whereas hers, it's hopelessness, and it's like silent. It's like a shot, right? And so it's really like, it's not that she. I think that's why that one hits different, right? It's not that she went crazy because of necromorphs. It's that something was going on that she couldn't quite even get out in the message what exactly was happening, but like she had just lost all hope of any, good ending for her, right?
Right. I thought that dialogue was okay. I was hoping for something a little more personal and heartfelt than her just saying like, I loved you, Isaac. Bah. I know it was a little bit more than that.
I've always loved you.
I've always loved you. Or it's like, I would hope that if a loved one was killing themselves in front of me, they'd have something better to say than just, I've always loved you.
It was like, Isaac, have you ever played the game Silent Hill 2? No reason.
Here we go. Morn submits a comment on Patreon, says, is it just me or is it obvious throughout the entire game that Nicole's a hallucination inside Isaac's head? It is so weird how they try to play it off like some big plot twist. When the big reveal happens and Kendra tells us that Nicole is dead, I was just sitting there thinking, yeah, obviously. Yeah, I would imagine everybody's on board with that, but I don't know. Like, I knew that going in, so I'd be interested to hear if it was a surprise for other people playing for the first time.
When I played for the first time, it was a surprise to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Same age as that. You assume that she got killed by necromorphs. Like, yes, she's dead. I get that, and that he's going crazy and projecting this. But
sure,
the whole twist that like he knew deep inside, he knew she was dead before we started this game.
Yeah.
Was the twist?
I think the fact that it's tied to something from the the ending is based on where we started, which is always a good way to complete a narrative. But also an unsettling way to complete a narrative. Yeah.
Another robot says, I wonder if the remake will change the story because I don't think that the original's plot twist at the end will have the same impact when it releases. That's a good question. Yeah, does anybody have thoughts on how they could do that?
I don't even know.
Just keep it?
Yeah, maybe they'll do some other stuff with her, but like it's really important for the continuing story of the series. Like, and we'll talk about like the very, very end of this game, but like one of the reasons that I'll defend it is like Dead Space 2 is that last 5 seconds stretched out into an entire game, and so it's like they would really have to like shift what the series was if they were going to change that plot point.
Like it would be a completely different story, which isn't a bad thing necessarily.
Well, just maybe that presentation, though. I don't know if you're going this direction with the Cape, but just that idea of like, maybe you make it more of a twist or less of a twist. Maybe that Nicole is dead in the beginning, just how they're framing it. But at the same point, there's probably going to be at least 1 million players that play this that didn't know the plot.
Yeah.
Right?
Like and I think that's one of the things that I think it would be a disservice to change it, just because like you're introducing Dead Space to a new generation of gamers, to a new console of gamers. Like, granted, it's on Game Pass, you can go do it, but there's a lot of people who still haven't played it and they'll pick it up for the first time. Yep. And I think the only thing that they could change is, one, give Isaac a voice and let him interact to these moments. Yeah. give that, because I think changing any of the ending doesn't work. What does work is building more emotional weight to all of the moments leading up to it. Because we don't get that with the Silent Isaac. We don't get to see a lot of the trauma and the grief that Isaac's going through, because he just grunts and asphyxiates and stomps.
Yeah.
And I think that is how you could change it. You could change it by giving us more to hold on to and like add more weight into the love he has for her, because then that makes it all the more shattering when the ending happens. And that's something we haven't seen. So it's a way to give new fans and new players Dead Space and give old fans more than what they first got.
And I wonder if they could even, I don't know, would this be too cheesy? But instead of just having like the audio of Nicole coming in throughout the game of her saying like, make us whole, Isaac, please. If they played like clips of their life on Earth together, just like weird little like audio flashbacks even, just to try and add something to that relationship.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you think they could change the chapters so it'd spell like R.I.P. Isaac's GF or something just to throw everyone off?
Yeah, that'd be really smart.
Yeah, I mean, if you start messing with that, then like to me, it's not a remake anymore. You might as well reboot. Like, what are we doing here? And if this is supposed to carry me into Dead Space 2, then you cannot not have that moment at the end of the game with Nicole.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if they take that moment out, they change that moment, I'm gonna be offended.
Ooh, all right, he said it.
Yeah.
You can't mess with that.
Yeah.
Well, like you're changing the core of the game. You're changing the dynamic of it. You're changing the payoff of it. Yep. Because if you don't have that, you also, then why did Kendra do all of this?
Right.
Kendra's no longer like girl bossing it up, being evil. Like she's just flailing about, maybe
flailing like an alien outside of a ship. Yeah. Matt Lynch says, I was a fool to think I was done with jump scares during the final cutscene. Man, that got me good. That was so, it was unexpected, but it was definitely that moment of like, okay, is there going to be a necromorph on the ship? There's going to be some alien-like ending here, but I did not expect just that weird beat of a necromorph with her face on it to scream and then cut to credits. It's so silly.
I very clearly remember the first time I played this, and it's like, it's cheap, arguably, but like, God, it worked. I about fell out of my chair or like the couch at my parents' house that I was playing it on. Like, it really, really got me. And like, if you're gonna do something cheap, at least make it effective, and like it was effective at scaring me.
Okay. Oh, good. I'm glad it worked.
I don't remember. I'm not gonna cuss, but like I use the B word liberally in my life. I use it when I'm excited.
Sure.
Like yes. And I also use it when I'm terrified and something shocks me. I'm like, oh my God. I very loudly, because I remember that it was going to happen, but I didn't know where. I couldn't remember exactly. And so like I kept anticipating it, and I think that made it even louder. So like I just very loudly yelled the B word, and you could hear my controller like just kind of like rattle.
Perfect.
And my husband was like, what's happening? And I was like, Dead Space.
It's the grand finale. Yeah.
Yes. And I think too, like as much as it's cheap, like it's a payoff. And that was also like, that made me desperate for Dead Space 2. Like when that was how it ended, I wanted more.
I was confused, not knowing Dead Space 2 and 3 and the plot in there. It's like, are they going to deal with this in any way? Is this just a stupid, cheap jump scare for the ending? Or is it, I had no idea what to make of it. So I don't know if I was excited about the idea of where they could go with Dead Space 2, even now, knowing that obviously they keep going. I was just kind of confused about like, what am I supposed to take away from this?
Amazing about that.
What's that?
As soon as we're done here, you can just fire up Dead Space 2.
I know. Isn't that weird?
Really, it should be like a MinnMax stream, because like the opening level, even just the opening cutscene of Dead Space 2 is like so good, and immediately is kind of like, gee, what happens after this? And it like answers that.
I'll totally do it, because Leo streamed on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/MinnMax show. Thanks for following us, everybody. But he streamed the opening of Mass Effect 2 after we did the deepest dive of Mass Effect 1. Because all of us during that deepest dive kept saying like, oh man, opening of Mass Effect 2 is so freaking good. So it's very fun to see Leo experience that for the first time. So yeah, I'll absolutely stream the opening of Dead Space 2 at some point. I will
say like a little note about the ending too. Like it had a different, it was a good effective scare like now, but the first time I played it, it made me drive to the GameStop that I worked at and immediately exchange my rental of Dead Space for Dead Space 2. Oh. And I was like, yeah, I gotta do this right now.
Oh, perfect.
You gotta jump right into it. Oh, that's cool.
Well, yeah, because I played through them to catch up for Dead Space 3 because Dead Space 3 was launching. And so like I needed to fill the gap in my gaming mind so that I could adequately tell people to pre-order Dead Space 3.
Oh, boy, sorry.
Wait like 2 years.
So instead of like waiting till my next, I just drove over and I was like, I don't care if I'm on today. I want Dead Space 2. So I bought Dead Space 1 and then rented out Dead Space 2 because like I hadn't heard anybody talk about it, but like I wanted more, but was still kind of like sequel. Let's see.
Right.
And then I beat it and then I went and I bought Dead Space 2. So.
Well, there we go. So in the ending sequence here, before you get on the ship and after you take out the bots, there's a couple of like pretty abrupt jumps to a cutscene. I don't know if I was just in the wrong spot or something. It was like, okay, cutscene start, and it was just like a weird quick teleport. But it does make me just think about the absurdity of this game not really having a lot of cutscenes. They're few and far between when they wrestle control away from the player, but it's always jarring. And like, do you have thoughts on that, Zach? Like what it's like to create a game without cutscenes? It's just a lot easier.
No, I think it's a lot harder. You don't have these cuts. You don't have these opportunities just on the technical side to like dump out assets and load in new stuff behind this movie or whatever. I don't think there are any cuts until you're in the shuttle. I could be wrong, but I don't think there are any cuts in Dead Space 1. I think that there's like a tentacle grab that happens on the main boss or like right before him or something that like maybe will have to teleport you a little bit because the area you're walking through is too wide or something.
I think it's when you're running onto the shuttle then. I think there's a weird cut there.
Right. So yeah, right up until the end, there's no cuts. I think story wise and yeah, I think that's way harder. It's you're not getting to like sort of take a break, you know, you're just, and just on the technical side, all the like, you're constantly streaming. You have to have some streaming solution for all this where you know that you're not going to get these moments where you're clean and you know, hey, the player's done with that section. We can permanently close that and dump all those assets and just load in this stuff. So yeah, it's really impressive. It's weird that they didn't like market around that because it's a thing.
Save that for Cory Barlog to never stop talking about it. Yeah,
that half of God of War's marketing was about like half. No cuts. You know,
it was a big point.
Heard about it so much, and yeah, maybe it was like a thing where they weren't even confident that they could use like film language around it. I don't know. It's weird, but yeah.
The big thing I remember, the big takeaway, which is like kind of in that vein, is like the fact that the UI was all in game, like in universe.
Yeah. So they did.
Like, that was a bullet point I heard a lot. A lot of like reviewers and stuff I heard really elevate and talk about in a big way. And I think that, you know, because it's kind of like we're pretty knowledgeable in film and now we can kind of admire it, but like it's kind of invisible if you're not really looking out for it. But the UI, like the first time I pulled that up and you realize you can move the camera and see that it's a hologram in front of Isaac's face, I remember being like, whoa, this is awesome. You know, this is really cool, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Loads, right? They just attach all the loads to the doors. So you do have those doors. You go hit the button and it's like...
Yeah, really taking its time. Yep, the loudest doors in games.
Maybe they lose a little credit for that because it's like, well, okay, there's not a cutscene, but you're making me sit. There was one at the end that was like really long where I was just... I guess it was an elevator, but same thing. They were using the elevator to load and I was just staying in this elevator for like minutes.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things too about like not allowing for cuts and like choosing to go at it that way is it puts a bigger onus on them to consistently deliver. Like that pacing doesn't let up.
Yeah.
Like it just like it gives you like a very small lull and then ramps up really quickly. And maintaining that type of spacing in any sort of storytelling is extremely hard. It's the reason, because I guess I kind of liken it to a really good action sequence, one of the reasons that American action is like not that great is because it uses so many jump cuts and you lose like the seamlessness. But it also allows you to cover up some issues you may have with your actor doing stuff. A lot of East Asian action films, it's a lot of one shots. It's a lot of no cuts. It's a lot of let it breathe, let it flow. But that also means that you're putting more weight on your actors to either move out of the camera to allow a stunt double to come in and do it seamlessly, Or in the case of somebody like Tony Jaa, go up a pagoda for like 30 levels and do it in one take and hopefully not run out of steam. And so, like,
pull that up on YouTube, by the way, if you don't know what she's talking about. Sometimes I'll just watch that sequence, and it's
so
like,
good.
What do they search for?
What's the movie? Do you know the movie? You can probably just
I think it's
Tony Jaa one shot. You can probably
it's either The Protector or Ongbak. I think it's the
Protector. It's the Protector.
Yeah, it's the Protector. But like pacing is hard, and when you don't allow yourself the places to stop or like cover up mistakes, it makes it so much harder to execute a good story and execute good action. And I think that Dead Space is one of the perfect examples of knowing how to pace yourself, knowing your audience, and knowing how to keep them engaged without overloading them too.
Yeah, it made me think though of, why I would dare to say, oh, is it easier? It made me think of just like if you're laying out these levels and stuff and you're cutting things last second, you're rearranging the flow of these, like all you'd have to do, Zach, is just kind of like redo some of that VO and maybe just like a little thing of like, Isaac, we need you to pick up the 3 power nodes for this reason compared to this reason. And like, it seems like if they were in a panic and had to rearrange levels towards the end, it's a lot easier to come up with some new narrative bit for why he needs to go.
There's no like, I mean, I should say it's easier, but it certainly wouldn't be easier for the people that have to make the cutscenes, right? Because like that, that's a bunch of work that, there's a bunch of work in there that, hey, you're still getting these like scripted sequences, right? That are kind of like a cutscene, but you're just watching. But it's like, hey, all those camera cuts that you would normally have, all that kind of, all the really specific lighting stuff where oftentimes you're lighting a scene from this cut and then you cut here. It actually completely changed the lights in that scene when you do that. There's a lot of like background work that goes in that, you kind of don't have to worry about. You can also get away with, Nicole walking through dead bodies. If that's a cut scene, then like, I'm going to definitely write a task for you to fix that,
Right.
So for sure there's some of it, but yeah, I just think the other thing too is like to the pacing point that you just made is not having the moment where the player gets to like, oh, I hit the cutscene, let me put my controller down, grab my water, you're kind of afraid to put your controller down.
Totally.
And I know Glenn talked about it at one point. I don't know if he ever talked about this publicly, but at one point they were talking about like no pause. Like they weren't going to pause the game except for maybe in like certain points at the end of the chapter or something. At least the idea got floated, right? And it's that idea.
It's Dark Souls did exactly that a couple of years later, and it's like you don't pause
and
when you're doing inventory stuff. Yeah, but it's like that has been done before, and Dead Space is kind of similar with the inventory system.
Yeah, you can't jump in there.
You can't like use a stasis pod while pausing the world around you.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things, like as a credit to the game and something I wonder if like they thought about was by allowing you to interact with the world in a lot of cases when you have the video playing, which is supposed to be your exposition and your cutscene because you're watching somebody. Like, were people worried that like players would get distracted and like lose the story? Because it's like, oh, you can just kind of keep moving and sometimes and you could just move within a room. But like, I know I went and kicked some boxes to see if one of them was the original chunky Xbox that I could smash. Like, and so like, I think as a credit to storytelling, like there was something about those that it felt like each one had a moment where it stopped me from moving and actually made me pay attention for the most part. And I think that like that piece is something that should get kudos, because if you're allowing your player to move and get distracted while you're also giving them story bits, like that's rough.
Yeah, for sure. Craig Belmont writes in and says, as a whole, Dead Space never has a boring moment. In Chapter 12 specifically, it really climaxes wave after wave of monsters while escorting the Mark, a zero-G gravity tunnel that disorients the player to no end, a nice trek back to where we start this chapter, a gross giant shooting gallery boss to make sure we don't get bored, and the final jump scare with Nicole. Make us whole again. Also, thanks for doing this deepest dive. I was able to replay this fantastic game with fantastic people to listen to. Thank you, Craig, for supporting us on Patreon and leaving that comment. Did anybody...
A zero-G tunnel did really mess with me.
Yeah, the
like
babies flying
you're
around
just
in
kind
there.
of going around in like loops. I was like, ooh.
Yeah. I was popping 2 Dramamines by the end of this game just to make it through, but I did it. I'm sick of having to do it, but I did it. Did anybody check out the new Game Plus stuff much? So you get like 50,000 credits, 10 power nodes, you get the military suit, and what they called backstory logs. But I was confused about what that was exactly.
I think it's just
more
story logs.
More story logs, yeah. I didn't touch it this time. Just haven't had time.
Yeah, I tried going back through, and it's cool. You have all your stuff, and it took a while before you get to a bench, though, where it imagined is where you'd have to go before you can put on the military suit, unless I was missing something. So I was trying to get to a bench, but after like 10 minutes of playing, I was like, all right, I'm good. I can just Google what the military suit looks like.
It's cool, though. It doesn't look like you're an engineer anymore. It's basically like you're a stormtrooper or like a space cop. You know, it looks more like, oh, this is designed for fighting stuff.
Like the posters in the Valor, I'd imagine. Like that's what that's. Yeah. Okay, that's sweet. Darkfish Days says, has anyone noticed that if you backtrack through areas when there's no current goal asking you to backtrack, that there are no new enemy encounters? It's a nice break to return to a store or get stasis restored before knowing you won't be attacked. But does it pull me out? But it does pull me out of the horror experience a bit. Would you prefer if encounters were randomized?
That's the only time I ever go back. I would desperately need a store. So I'm going to go back because I desperately need a store because I'm either out of health or I'm out of ammo. And enemies thrown at me in that situation.
I mean, I also, it's like, you know, we talk a lot about how this is like a big haunted house with things popping out at you, but it's like, those are carefully thought about, you know, the moments that they pop out are like, you're going to turn this corner and you're going to see this shadow and then something's going to be behind you. And I think if you start just attaching that completely to an AI, you're going to, it's going to feel less like an intentional haunted house and more just like a game where you shoot stuff.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that people miss. And I think I talked about it a little bit in the first time. Like people give jump scares a lot of flack, but like they are thought out.
Right.
Like majority of the time they're planned. And so is the subversion of them. So it makes sense to take them away. I also, like, for me, any game I play, like not even just a horror game, but especially horror games, if there are two paths and this one looks like I need to go this way, I go the other way first.
Oh, of course.
So I can find things. Like my playthroughs of games take way too long because I don't believe in like not exploring everything. Like completing the medium took way too long. I should not have spent that long in that game. But so for me, I did end up with a lot of points, like especially when I was just trying to like rush where I wasn't using my the blue line thingy,
right.
The navigator as much as I should have. So like when you're already confused, because like I wouldn't say I was intentionally backtracking, but more so as trying to find my footing as to where I was supposed to go after kind of going away from where I needed to be. That akin to the I'm already desperate and need to go back to a store. This would just be frustrating if enemies popped up. I'm trying to find some semblance of footing. I like adding enemies to that is going to get me turned around again.
Yeah, for sure.
I also think, and I probably mentioned this last week, but I'll mention it again. The game, when they do have you backtrack for objectives, they handle it really well. They're constantly sort of setting up expectations. Like the first time you'll go through a hallway and then you'll come back through that hallway and something will happen that maybe you did expect or didn't expect, but they'll change that pattern the next time they do that. There's one point, I think one of the commenters mentioned it, where they put you through like the scariest, it's the one with the hanging body. Yeah. And then nothing really happens. And then you go do some stuff and then you're back in there and you know for sure something crazy is going to happen and nothing happens.
It just goes really fast. Yeah.
And to the jump scare point, even, I think jump scares are cheap if you take every single jump scare opportunity.
Yeah.
This game passes up on so many of those, which just makes the ones that they do so much stronger, right? The payoff is really good.
Yeah, for sure. Oren Eccles and Dan R. and Robert Cassidy all wrote in talking about like back half getting a little fatigued. A lot of samey environments. Combat kind of felt repetitive. Yeah, I hear you. Like I mentioned it before, but I enjoyed the back half more than I was expecting. I was bracing for impact, but I feel like they shook it up more in the second half than the first half at least. So I don't know if anybody else got fatigued by the end.
A lot more combat, so like
maybe
that feels. I don't know.
Yeah.
The one complaint I have about the combat in the second half, I don't like the enhanced enemies. The ones that like And mainly it's the feeling that like, man, there's no feedback because each limb now with multiple shots, I'm not getting this feedback and sometimes the limbs kind of aren't perfect. Like you'll shoot and you think you hit a limb, especially like I'm always kind of trying to shoot right at the base, which is probably not the best strategy. And so like, yeah, that's the only part about the back half is those enemies that were like stronger and took more shots. I'd rather just have more enemies, if you're trying to ramp up the challenge. But I like that you can only do the super suspenseful, creepy stuff so much before it's like, hey, you got to come with the goods and start delivering these big combat sequences where you're doing different enemy mixes and stuff.
Totally. Beaner Boy writes in and says, hey all, did you all know that when using the Ripper, you can use kinesis on your blade to draw it to you, then shoot it back out to end range without losing your blade? I did not. Huh. That sounds cool. I used it just to
done that at one time, but that's dope. I did not remember that.
There we go. Aaron T writes in and says, didn't really hit me until this last half, but wow, is this game brown? It still works since rusty, grimy metal is kind of the vibe here, but it really highlights just how influential Resident Evil 4 and its color palette was in this era of gaming. Yeah. Was this something that Dead Space 2 and 3 teams consciously moved away from?
They're a lot more
put
colorful.
Themselves in situations where they could just have a bigger variety of environments. But also, Resident Evil 4 gets a lot of credit, but so does all of the horror movies and stuff that we referenced last time. It's like Alien is not a colorful film.
Right.
No. Also, like, sometimes you just need things to be bleak, y'all. Like, not every... Like, you can get, like, vibrant Ari Aster horror if you want, but then, like, a lot of... Like, sometimes, like, bleakness just lends to certain environments. And I never usually have, like, an issue when it comes to like sci-fi horror being that way, because I think like like Jacob said, like a lot of the ones we mentioned last time have very like same tones, very pulled down, but that's to emphasize what happens later. Like Sunshine doesn't have as much impact if that ship is like glowing white and pristine. Right. The fact that a lot of it is grayed out and then you have this magnificent, like, Cillian Murphy, like, immersed in, like, bright orange-red sun, you need to bounce against that.
Right, for sure. Zach, was there a lot of talk on the team about, I don't know if it's the art director or marketing or who was pushing it for just discussions about, like, we gotta shake up this color palette?
I wasn't involved in any of that.
Yeah.
That stuff. I'm sure. Yes, you can tell with what they did with Titan Station and all that they definitely wanted it to be just more diverse environments, right?
Yeah. Aaron T also says, this is my first time playing Dead Space 1, and it was super fun to play alongside such big fans of the game. Extra thanks to Kate, Zach, and Jacob for being such amazing, insightful guests. Also, Kyle and Ben did fine. Thank you. I don't know what this means, but Bo wrote in and said, this game is real wet. And I was like, blood?
It's a goopy game.
It is goopy. James Martin writes in and says, to sum it up in one word, I'd use the word seamless. The real-time events, live UI, and all the small details and systems make it truly one of the most immersive games ever made, as well as one of the least gamey. That is true. Yeah.
I think it has to do our Half-Life or, God of War kind of thing again. What's so cool about doing the one camera shot thing isn't just that it's like, oh, you're never taken out of the moment, but also like we were with Isaac from the very beginning of this thing to the very end, and we didn't skip any parts of it. And like that's very satisfying to just be like, there's no question mark for me of like a time jump and suddenly they're all sitting in mission control together. It's like we saw every little dirty piece of machinery that he had to turn on, and that just makes it feel like a very satisfying journey when you're over.
Yeah. When it's done and he takes off his helmet and he's got that like look, or just like, and he stops the message, and like that's like the most connected I felt to Isaac. It's like, me too. I'm like putting down my controller the same way he's taking off his helmet,
Right.
Yeah. I also think it's also cool too, in like the sense that like this is a game that like is making you question things, but the only constant you have is Isaac because he's the only thing you're with the entire time. and everything else is a big old question mark.
Right, for sure. I Like Colorful Socks writes in on Patreon with a killer comment, just said, hey, everybody, Dead Space is great.
Wow.
If we if we have one message for you, it's that Dead Space is great. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. And also,
that's good to hear.
I know it feels like I'm bragging, but yeah, big takeaways. Less scary than I thought. Also less hard than I thought. I think in my mind, I build up survival horror games as these really challenging experiences overall, where it's like typically on average about as difficult as the average game. It's just for some reason the horror aspect.
Difficult. If you are dying over and over again, then it ceases to be scary. If you're having to do the same sequences over and over again, you lose that scariness. That last boss, you really only want the player to play that last boss once.
Right.
You know? So I agree. And I have that same feeling of like, I feel, it's like such a mental strain to play like a survival horror game.
Yeah.
That it just feels more difficult, but it's not like the skill is more difficult. It's that like, it's like mentally more difficult,
Yeah, there's something to that for sure. Other big conclusive thoughts from anybody after the big replay of Dead Space 1?
No, great.
It's great.
There are a lot of really, genuinely surprising moments, which is just fun that it can happen in a game that is relatively old at this point. Like looking up and seeing that big ship about to crash into you is like that has not lost power in the 13 years since or whatever. Like that still hits, and there are a lot of moments like that, and they still kind of hit the beats that they were supposed to, and that tells you that it's like technical capability is only a part of why games work, and like the people who made this knew what they were doing. They knew the systems that they were working with, and they were like able to use that to do pretty much, it feels like exactly what they wanted to do. I think that is one of the best parts of playing this, is like you play it, and we talked a little about this last time. It's like it feels like this was the idea of what Dead Space was going to be, and they made that. And that's cool.
Yeah,
it's a miracle. Neuroflare has a very wise comment for us to go out on, saying, it is fairly common knowledge after the game was released, but some folks may not know that Isaac Clarke was named after Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. One of those very obvious things that I realized, hey, we haven't mentioned that yet on the deepest dive. I guess we should probably hit that very obvious beat, but that's a good sign that the game is leaning into its inspirations, just beating you over the head with, we're going to name him Isaac Clarke. But it works, man. It works.
Good name too. It has like a good ring. Isaac Clarke. Yeah,
for sure.
His son Arthur Asimov.
Oh, save him. He's coming in the future.
My big overall thing was like, I've always talked about how much I love Dead Space. I won't shut up about it.
Yeah, it's true.
And I did fear that it's like, I wonder if going back to it, there'll be like a lot of rough edges, but like, I think it holds up really well, to the point where I'm like, it's almost more confused about the remake angle. Like, it is something I'm excited about. It's something I'm eager to play, but it's like, this game is like, does not feel like an old game. It's just like that pace just keeps it going, and it's just like it plays well, and it just holds up really well, and it's still fantastic.
I would dare say, at least for 2008, and probably for a couple year span here, for AAA games, it is the best aging game. For a big Braids 2008, it doesn't really age too much either. But the point stands.
Braid lately?
Yeah, I guess that's true. We're saving it for the deepest dive on Braid for the future. Mario Kart Wii.
That remake's coming out soon too.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you can't get away from it. Zach, did you ever think that Dead Space would be a big thing in your life again?
No, I mean, I'm really happy that you guys invited me to do this, because I don't know that I would have played the game again. Maybe ever. Just because. That's how life goes, right? You're kind of moving forward and moving on. And I will definitely go and play Dead Space 2 now, and probably 3 now, just because I'm back. I'm pulled back into it. So it's really cool. No, I didn't know what to expect, and it's been cool to play it again.
I totally, same thing, Zach. I immediately went and downloaded 2 and 3. Like, I don't know if I will play them and beat them, but I'll certainly play the first hour or so.
Like, you intend to, you finish that game and you intend to, whether or not life, lots of things come up. But yeah, I think I'll definitely get through 2 again because I'm going to start 2 tomorrow. So
yeah. But aren't you sick of 2? I'd imagine you played through 2 hundreds of times.
And now I have all these there were so many things from that I thought were part of 1. In my memory, they all kind of blur together, and they were actually part of 2. And they're like moments that I'm like, I just want to see, and you can't, I think the scariest moment in the whole franchise, maybe not the scariest moment, it's not a jump scare, but the Nicole in the opening of 2 on the table,
easy.
It's fine. You're gonna see Nicole again. I can't not play that now. I have to go see that scene. And
right.
Will I carry all the way through the game? We'll see.
Okay.
I'm just excited to say that it holds up so much better, and it holds up very well to me, and I have a larger appreciation of it because I have seen so much more sci-fi horror now. I have seen so much of what inspired this. I have seen so much inspired by this, and I get to getting to re-experience it. I didn't know that I was going to have this the same love that I had when I first played it. And I think that that's always a magical thing because I think sometimes we love games, but revisiting them can be hard, especially when it comes to mechanics and graphics and all of this. And yet Dead Space still felt scary, and it still felt like an homage to everything that I love, but it felt like something new. And I'm just genuinely thankful to have been invited on here and to play it again, because it's everything that I love about space horror. And I really want to play Dead Space 2, so I'm going to try and find time in my calendar to do so.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you for being on, Kate. Thank you for being on, Zach. Thank you for being on, Jacob. Kyle, I enjoy talking about games with you after all these years, so thank you for being on as well. We have links below in the description if you want to follow these people on Twitter, find out what they're working on. Kate, you want to give one final plug for all of your fine work?
You can find me at OhMyMythRandier on Twitter. I talk a lot of anime, horror, movies, pretty much everything. And you can find all of my work at ButWhyTho PC on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're at. And if you want to jump in and talk with us about video games, movies, and more, head over to discord.gg/ButWhyTho.
Perfect. Zach, thank you for being here. Give the plug of the century, man.
Yeah, so you can find me if you want to find me. I'm gonna gas Jacob up a little bit here. There's this video essay he did for Dead Space 2. It also talks about Dead Space 1. You maybe mentioned it. I watched this thing 4 times between last week
and
this week. Really good. Really, really good. I suggest anybody that's fans of Dead Space, if you just played Dead Space 1 for the first time, go play Dead Space 2.
Yeah.
Then go watch that video. If you've already played all of them, go watch that video.
And what is it called again, Jacob?
What's that?
What's that video called again? On YouTube?
It's Dead Space 2 feels like a new game, I think.
Yep. Perfect, clean name. The master of headlines. And Jacob Geller, what's your favorite thing about Zach's game, Airborne Kingdom?
Oh, well, I love kingdoms. I love when they're not on the ground.
Hell yeah.
But in the sky.
Now we're talking. Jacob, if people want to follow your work, where should they go?
Yeah, just the channel is just called Jacob Geller. You can type that in. You'll find it. By the time this goes up, I will probably have a new video out. It'll be within the next 48 hours. It's not about video games, but I do think it's good.
All right. Very
interesting. I was
interesting.
hoping it would be about the ending of Dead Space 2, because you and I talked about that a lot, and I was disappointed when you didn't go in depth into specifically the ending of Dead Space 2.
The point was that I couldn't fit everything into that video, Kyle.
I know, it's okay.
Hey.
I'll also plug Jacob's video. It's very good.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Thank you for playing along with us, everybody, or watching this or listening to this. If you think that we gave the game the discussion it deserves, any help supporting the format moving into the future is appreciated over at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. We don't know what the next deepest dive will be, but I'm leaning, Kyle, I don't think you were in on this meeting, but I'm leaning towards making it a community poll that they'll get to vote for choosing what the next deepest dive will be. So no promises on that, but it might be coming up sooner than you think as well. So again, thanks everybody who supports us and jumped over there and submitted a comment and played along and all that fun stuff. Couldn't do without you. All right, that's it. Kyle, do you want to come up with some clever way to say goodbye for the deepest dive on Dead Space?
Oh, right. I'm supposed to make lawyers come after me or something?
Yeah.
Right?
Just, what's the craziest thing you can say that a lawyer come after you for?
Lawyers are bad.
There it is, everybody. Okay, thanks so much. Bye.
Make us whole.
Lawyers make us whole. If you are sick of snark, clickbait, and an avalanche of movie news, you can help support independent games media by subscribing to MinnMax's YouTube channel here or checking out the benefits over on Patreon. It's a nice, clean handshake. You support us, and we won't make dumb, condescending stuff for you. Your support helps us continue our mission of focusing on games, friends, and getting better. Patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. We'd appreciate it.